Today, my guest is Lazar Jovanovic. Lazar is a professional vibe coder. He gets paid to vibe code all day and build internal and external products. This conversation is going to blow your mind in so many ways. This is not only a really interesting new career path for people to consider. If you listen to what Lazar shares, it's also a really important glimpse into where things are heading for tech roles. I found myself thinking more deeply about the future of product management and engineering and design during this chat than I have in a long time. We also spent a bunch of time on Lazar's best advice as an elite vibe coder for getting the most out of AI tools. He's got a bunch of really interesting and useful frameworks I have not heard anyone else share that will immediately level up your success using all the latest AI tools. This conversation is going to expand your mind in so many ways. I cannot wait for you to hear it. If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and follow it in your favorite podcasting app or YouTube. It helps tremendously. And if you become an insider subscriber of my newsletter, you get over 20 incredible products for free for an entire year, including a year free of Lovable and Replit, Bolt, Gamma, N8N, Linear, Devon, Postdoc, Superhuman, Descript, Whisperflow, Perplexity, Warp, Granola, Magic Patterns, Raycatch, FPRD, Mobbit, and Stripe Atlas. Head on over to lennysnewsletter.com and click Product Pass. With that, I bring you Lazar Jovanovic after a short word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Strela, the customer research platform built for the AI era. Here's the truth about user research. It's never been more important or more painful. Teams want to understand why customers do what they do. But recruiting users, running interviews, and analyzing insights takes weeks. By the time the results are in, the moment to act has passed. Strela changes that. It's the first platform that uses AI to run and analyze in-depth interviews automatically, bringing fast and continuous user research to every team. Strela's AI moderator asks real follow-up questions, probing deeper when answers are vague, and surfaces patterns across hundreds of conversations, all in a few hours, not weeks. Product, design, and research teams at companies like Amazon and Duolingo are already using Strela for Figma prototype testing, concept validation, and customer journey research, getting insights overnight instead of waiting for the next sprint. If your team wants to understand customers at the speed you ship products, try Strela. Run your next study at strela.io/Lenny. That's strella.io/Lenny. Today's episode is brought to you by Samsara. If you listen to this podcast, you know that we spend a lot of time talking about building things that sit on a screen, onboarding funnels, mobile apps, and checkout flows. Samsara is building products for the physical world. First responders racing to emergencies, truck drivers carrying critical supplies, construction workers building our cities and data centers. These are people who put everything on the line every single day, and Samsara's technology protects them. Samsara is solving complex problems at the intersection of hardware, software, and edge AI. And their AI doesn't just detect events, it reasons about the intent and answers questions like, did that truck driver brake abruptly because they were distracted, or was that a heroic act? If you want to ground LLMs in messy, real-world telemetry or solve edge AI constraints at a planetary scale, Samsara wants to talk to you. If you like playing with enormous datasets, moving fast, and working in small teams, come help build the technology that makes the physical world safer and more efficient. Visit samsara.com/Lenny to learn more. That's samsara.com/Lenny. Lazar, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man.
Okay, so I had Elena Verna on the podcast. She's head of growth at Lovable. She mentioned that she works with a professional vibe coder, you. I had so many questions. I almost wanted to go on a tangent with her to try to understand this role. Instead, I asked you to come on the podcast. There's so much I want to talk about. I want to talk about just this career path and just how you got into it, how other people might get into it, where you think this is all going, this whole vibe coding thing. Also, I want to get into what you've learned about it being successful using all these AI tools, because this is your job. First, I want to just start with understanding this actual job. Just what is it that you do day to day? You're basically being paid a full-time job to vibe code. Incredible. What are you responsible for? What are you doing day to day?
Well, as you said it, it's a dream job, right? I get paid to do what I would have done anyways, right? It's the best job in the world. I get to use tools like Lovable every day to push projects to production, whether for internal or external use. Those could be ranging anything from different templates on marketing side, sales side, or whatever, or they can be as deep as like building some internal tools with a lot of integrations and connections and whatnot, right? So the surface area that I cover is pretty wide across all departments because it's such a flexible role and it complements so many things, right? It's an ideas role. A lot of people have a lot of great ideas, but they don't know how to build them, and or they just don't have the bandwidth to. And that's where I step in today to make sure that these ideas come to life fast and with quality and security that they should have in order to be available for users in production.
And one thing that's really interesting here is it's both internal and external tools. A lot of companies have someone building a bunch of internal tools using AI. You ship stuff that's actually public and it's like sort of a product, level products.
Yeah, definitely. Like some of the stuff that I've shipped that are public are like when we launched our Shopify integration, most of the, if not all the templates that users were remixing were built by me, right? So stuff like that, or like the merch store, because we wanted to obviously prove the concept that, hey, Lovable and Shopify just works. It's so simple, anybody can do it. I vibe coded our merch store. So all the merch, including this shirt that people were buying online, they would have bought it from a store that was built by me. But then on the internal side, we want to track a lot of things. Like one of the cool things that we want to build now, for example, is like feature adoption matrix. Like if we build a feature, how many people are actually using it and adopting it? Like, and that's a pretty custom build, right? We have a very custom stack. We're building custom features. There's nothing out there that I could just pick off the shelf and build or adopt faster than I would have built it myself. Like at this point, I'm at a stage where like, if it takes me an hour or 2 hours to set up like a big enterprise account somewhere, I'm just going to build it myself faster. So, I'm in that position of like build versus buy. I'm in the build boat, so to speak. Yeah.
And then who do you report to? Are you kind of this rover that helps wherever, or are you within a specific team?
I'd say probably closer to the former, right? I've started in growth, right? Elena brought me on early on, and because she has so many great ideas, and like she just needed somebody with the right type of mindset and velocity and ownership to just take them away, build them up, get them into production, whether they're like based on education or anything, go to market or whatever. But then obviously when you're able to ship fast, everybody needs that in an environment that we as a company are now living in, which is we're the fastest growing startup in history. So every department needs a Lazar now or yesterday. So now I'm like shifting a little bit, I guess, into some of the go-to-market roles and even building some, again, internal tools for enterprise team. But I'm working on some community tools as well right now as we speak. So I'm a little bit all over the place, but I kind of thrive in that environment where like I'm given a rough concept, a rough idea, and I'm just tasked to bring it to life as soon as possible.
Okay, I'm hoping with this chat we create a lot more Lazars, and I want to get to the career path, how you got to this and what it takes to actually become a full-time vibe coder. But I want to start with, because you do this full-time, you're at the top 0.1% elite level of vibe coding. You're doing this full-time. They hired you to do this as a job. I'm so curious what you've learned. What are some pro tips that you've developed for being successful with AI tools, Lovable, and also just more broadly? What are maybe 2 or 3 things you've learned that help you be really good at this job?
The first understanding that I had very early on, even though just in full transparency before we begin, I don't have a technical background. I never wrote a single line of code in my life. Almost, like I've written a couple of console logs manually, and that's about it, right? So like I'm very much lean onto AI assistance.
Let me actually follow that thread, because that's such a good point. And something that when we were chatting earlier, you pointed out, your feeling is it's actually an advantage to not have a technical background when you get into this space.
Yeah, yes, I honestly feel that it is, because people like me don't know that they are not supposed to be building XYZ. And that's how we actually are able to build it. Let me give you an example. Like 6-7 months ago, somebody in our community was like, oh, I wish Lovable can build Chrome extensions, right? And then folks that are not technical were like, well, why is that not possible, right? And then people that are technical start explaining you, oh, well, it's a React, it's different stack, it's this. And people like me, including myself, we just go in to Lovable and like, build me a Chrome extension based on this app. And I was able to do that with Lovable. There were people that were able to build desktop applications on Lovable. Again, something that shouldn't be possible. It simply is, right? Our community manager, Whitney, at one point, she was like building this presentation deck for something. She's like, would it be cool if this was a video, right? And then she just prompted her way into generating an actual video inside Lovable before that was available. Now that's a feature. Now you can prompt Lovable to do it. But back in the day when she did it, even I thought it was impossible. I never tried it. So I think that's the advantage that we have over people that are technical. We just come into this completely unbiased and very positively delusional, which I think you have to have when working with AI tools. You have to come with this delusion that absolutely everything is possible until proven wrong. And like, that's just the pursuit that I have in my mind that has helped me, among other things that we'll chat today, I think, to excel in this role that I have at Lovable.
Two of the, I think, concerns, maybe traps people that don't have a technical background fall to in theory is, one is if you get blocked, it's not obvious how to solve a problem. And two is just, are you building like this like teetering slop that will collapse someday because you don't know, system architecture, you don't know if this is going to scale, all those sorts of things. So coming back to what you've learned about how to be successful and build successful products, talk us through just things you've done and things you've learned for how to avoid those sort of things, and what you do when you get stuck is one example.
I'm happy that you mentioned like those limitations. I have some other ones that I want to bring in, but let's address this one first, which is the most important one, and that is you have to be self-aware, right? I didn't come into this. Yes, I am delusional, as I mentioned, in the sense that I just don't want to accept something's not possible, but I'm also well aware that I need to be better in order for it to become a reality from my own point of view and my own sake. So I understood very early that coding is not the problem that we're solving for here, that the problem we're solving for is clarity, right? Like the output that AI can do is much faster than human output anyway. So like very early on, I started leveraging chat mode. And to this day, I can say I spent 80% of my time in planning and chatting and only 20% in executing the plan, actually, right? I'm optimizing for the right kind of speed. Most people optimize for the wrong one. That's the first lesson that I learned literally on day 2, because I came into Lovable. That was my first exposure to this. I've tested and played around with all the tools, obviously, but like whether somebody's doing it in Cursor or Cloud Code, doesn't matter where you are. The problem remains the same. You need to be clear on what you want to do, and you need to know what you're doing, because these are still just tools. Yes, AGI is coming, but it's not there yet. So like until it's here, you're still steering the ship. In order for you to steer the ship, you kind of have to know the instructions, right? And the best way to learn is by building, but treating these tools almost as technical co-founders and educators, and learning while doing, and religiously reading the agent output, not the code output. I don't care about the code. Like the syntax is none of my interest. It's what the agent tells me it did that matters to me. I put a lot of trust in LLMs and AI these days. And I understand that there may be some people that are not as confident as I am. I just feel that the models today are good enough for me to trust in their syntax output. However, I'm concerned about the agent output, and because of the 2 limitations that I want to tackle on next, right? The first one being that there's a limitation when you work with LLMs. So there's a machine level limitation and there's a human level limitation, right? The first one is there's something that is known as the context memory window, right? And for non-technical people, I like to use the Aladdin and the genie analogy when I explain, right? It's very simple. Everybody knows the storyline. You rub the lamp, a genie comes out and tells you, okay, I'll grant you 3 wishes, not 3,000 wishes, not 3 million, just 3 at a time, right? To me, when I translate it into working with AI, that simply means, hey, I can only make so many requests within a request at a time for AI to be able to listen, understand what it needs to do, scope it, do the research, read, like take all the actions, all the inputs and ingredients that it needs to produce a high quality output, right? So that's the first part, understanding that there's a limit and it's denominated in tokens. Maybe that's going to be different a year from now. But today, there's a token limitation. I'll take an arbitrary number of 100,000 tokens, for example. So when you make a request, a part of those tokens is AI spends to read stuff, another to browse the web, another to think, and then another to execute the code, right? Then there comes the second limitation, which is you, me and you, humans, which is, let's go back to the analogy of the genie and the Aladdin. I asked the genie for the first wish, and the first wish is, I want to be taller. And guess what happens? Genie makes me 13 feet tall. All of a sudden, I can't sit in the car. I can't get into my house. I'm a dysfunctional human being, right? Right? Because I was not specific, right? Like, so the part that we need to optimize for today, it's going to get better, but today it's still not there yet, is that AI just don't understand what do you mean when you say, you know what I mean? Like you do. When I tell you that, we as humans, I'm 36, so I have 36 years of experience of living as a human to know what you mean, but AI doesn't have that, right? So you need to be specific. You need to provide references. You need to provide the right context. So what I've learned is how to combat that part. And I think, because I can't control the first part, which is the token memory window, the quality of the LLM models, you are 100% control of the latter. And that's what I want to dive into today as well, and just try to teach people, okay, if I'm the malleable part, how do I fix that part, right? I think that's the key lesson here.
This is so helpful, and I love this metaphor of the genie. This piece about clarity is such a thread I've been noticing across people that have been successful using AI tools, and it feels like an emerging core skill is learning clarity in the ask of the AI. Do you have any advice or anything you do there to help be better at being clear with what you want?
Yeah. So first of all, you need to be, as you said yourself right now, you need to be good at understanding what clarity means and how to translate it. In my terms, clarity means understanding what tasteful looks like, what's good enough versus what's world-class, what's magical. And I developed that through something that I heard from you mentioned before, which is exposure time, right? Making sure that I'm exposing myself to content and to people and to relationships or whatever that are going to help me to level up in that domain. Again, it goes back to self-awareness. Like I knew even before I joined Lovable, I was like, okay, even before I started using Lovable or any AI tools, first thing that I knew was like, I don't know how to code, right? So my first thing was like, oh, I can build. Wow, amazing. But a week later, it was like, oh, I can build, but I'm not fast enough. So I optimized for speed. So I was like, oh, I can build, and I can build so fast. And then 2 weeks later, my development cycle that I'm in began, and it's still ongoing, which is, wait a minute, have I even built this in the first place? Because it's like, once you figure out that we solved for the how, which is use AI assistant or rapid engineering, call it whatever you want. You can call it vibe coding if you want to, but like we solved for that. Now we got to solve for everything else, and everything else is what matters. Good design, good taste, good user experience. Like when you think about who you're building stuff for with these tools, you're building it for humans. Humans are emotional beings, and we all make our purchasing or any kind of decisions on an emotional basis, right? So I think that the core skill there to work on and develop today isn't, again, coding, although I have nothing against traditional engineering, and I'll say later why. I'm actually a big fan of elite engineering, but like people like me, people watching that are like, should I start learning how to code? If you haven't done it yet, I'd honestly say no. Like you're optimizing for the wrong skill set. We won't be rewarded in the world of AI for faster raw output. We will be rewarded for better judgment. So I think that better judgment comes with, again, to go back to your question, like, how are you solving for that? How are you solving for this? Well, it starts with exposure. So I'm deliberately exposing myself to people and resources that I need to consume to level up. And then a lot of it just comes from building as well. If we're honest, like it's a muscle. Everything is a muscle. You need to practice. You need to see what's possible. And, though that's where some of the techniques and mindset shifts that I want to also use an opportunity today to ingrain into people's minds later down the call may be useful.
So what I'm hearing here is because coding is now essentially a solved problem. I love that you don't look at the code. You don't even like you've never coded. You don't want to look at the code. You don't care about what's happening there. That instead you're watching this agent output. I want to actually ask about that. But what I'm hearing here is the areas you are investing in building in yourself is at the front end clarity around what it is, and I want to hear how you actually do that. What you do there, you have a really cool system there, and then there's like the taste and judgment of knowing, is this the thing I want? It feels like those are the two sides now that are more and more important. And on the taste judgment side, you share this concept. This is something Guillermo Rausch shared in our conversation. This idea of exposure time, exposure hours, being exposed to great stuff. Here's a great user experience. Here's a great onboarding flow. Here's a great, website. So I really like that advice. It's so actionable. Okay, I'm gonna spend more time with stuff that's great to inform my taste and judgment. And then on the clarity piece, let's actually talk about that. Just what do you do there to be clearer with Lovable and other AI tools to help it build the right thing?
This is the first mindset shift that I want to put into people's minds, right? If you just have a vague idea, let that be your first version of the project. Open, Cursor, Lovable, whatever it is that you're using, and just input a brain dump prompt, right? Just talk into it. Lovable specifically, I don't know about the other tools, has a really cool voice function. You click it, you just dictate the hell of it and just press send, right? Don't even wait for it to finish. Open a new window. Again, lovable.dev. In here, you're like, okay, as I was brain dumping, I think I found a good thread, right? I think things are getting clearer. So let me start another project now with more clarity, more deliverability. Like I know which features I want, which pages I want, and maybe I can even find a good reference. Maybe I can go on Maven, maybe I can go on Dribble, maybe I can go wherever, get a good screenshot, get a good animation, and attach it. Because most of these tools accept files as a part of the input. So like you have the second project started. Now things are even more clear. Now you expose yourself to quality, and now you're like, well, what if I found a template that actually is already out there? Why reinventing the wheel? I'm building a platform that somebody else built. Why not expose AI to what quality looks like, right? So what I'll do is I'll go to and find a library, 21st Dev, or a .build, or like whatever, places which allow me not to export screenshots, but export code snippets. Because guess what? Even though English is the #1 programming language, Lovable and all other tools still communicate in code the best. If you want to get pixel perfect results, just give them code. It will interpret it better than your English or Spanish or whatever language that you use in these tools. So that's the third way. You're like, okay, now I'm even more deliberate. I'm not even going as wide as like giving it vague concepts. I'm giving it code snippets. Like, I want this exact design. I want this exact type of functionality. So that's your third project. And then by the time you do all of these three, you're already at a level of clarity that you wouldn't have if you just sat with an empty piece of paper, or maybe chatting just with ChatGPT, but not taking action. I think taking action is so cheap these days, and free, by the way. Like all the tools I mentioned have free plans. Like most times you would be able to do this without spending any money at all, just by starting multiple projects. Because guess what? That doesn't also cost anything either, or doesn't incur additional cost except for builder credits. You're going to get 3, 4, 5, 6 different concepts that you can compare. As you're comparing them, clarity just keeps coming. Like, and things get better and better to understand. And you're also solving for one big problem that you mentioned. You used the term AI slop, and I like it because a lot of people, when they say AI slop, they don't refer the beautifying the code, but beautifying the design, right? This process that I just mentioned actually gives you 4 or 5 different design options, and in the long run, save you massive amounts of credits. Because a lot of people obsess over the concept of, oh, when I give them this hack, they're like, oh, but that doesn't that cost more? I'm like, yes, upfront, it may cost a little bit more. In the long run, if you really want to finish this project, you're actually saving hundreds of credits and maybe even hundreds of dollars, not to mention the amount of days, simply because you started from a point of better clarity and better refinement process, right? So like, that's the first step of solving for clarity. There are more, right? Which is the second layer, but I assume you may have some questions on this one.
Questions, and also just, wow, this is such a great, it shows you the power of having someone come into this world without an engineering background. This advice of just build it 5 times in parallel. You ask AI to try all kinds of stuff. Like, this is not how someone that has been a software engineer or PM or designer would approach stuff. So your advice here, which is so fun, is as you're getting started with a project, just run 5 different approaches at it to start. One is just brain dump. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's a general idea. Like, use Whisperflow or use the built-in mic. And then 2 is, okay, now I have a general idea. Let me try to type it out, like actually thinking through the prompt. 3 is, let me find a mock design somewhere online. And the sites you suggested were Mobbin and Dribble. Those are the 2 that you go to?
Yeah, most times, yeah.
Okay. And then the 4th, and these are all in parallel, it's great, is find like actual code template that looks similar to the thing you want to build. Download like the zip file basically and attach it. Or is it just HTML and CSS? Is that kind of what?
Anything.
Yeah. Anything you got. Cool.
Works,
Just like,
yeah.
Here you go. Okay. And then cool. Here's the prompt here. Make me what I want. And what I love is there's 2 wins here. One is just it helps you clarify the idea as you see the tool build it. Like, oh no, that's not what I mean. Let me try it again. And then 2 is you're pointed out, you can pick the right direction so that you're not locked into your first design and first architecture. To your point, if you then spend all this time trying to fine tune design and direction, it's like all these tokens are being lost. You could have just started over. This is so great. Someone may think, okay, of course, you're just getting us to spend all these lovable tokens. This is what a lovable person would tell me. But what I'm feeling is this is where you could save the most money, because if you get it correct in the beginning, you save so much work trying to get it back to where you want it to go.
1,000,000%. That I'm actually saving people. Like, I'm actually going against what I should be saying. If I was thinking about lovables, I would be like, no, just try to fix it in perpetuity. But that's not. We're not in business of doing that. We're in business of empowering anybody to build anything that they want. And then it's my personal mission that resonates with me, because if there wasn't lovable, I would have never built anything potentially in my life, and I don't think that would have been a fun life to live. So, I guarantee people, like, I've tested this framework with many people, and everybody's telling me the same thing. Eye opener, so simple yet unintuitive, as you said. Even though for me, it's kind of, I don't know. As you said, I attribute it to non-technical background. To me, that was the first thing that I would do. Like, I just did it. I never thought about it like, oh, I'm developing this amazing hack. I was just like, I'm waiting all this time for these agents to finish. I might as well start another project and another one and another one. And it's also a productivity hack. Like, that's when people ask me, like, wow, how do you ship so many things? I'm like, I never built just one project at a time. I built 5 or 6. I have 6 lovable tabs, and I just switch between them. And that's the next hack that I want to talk about, if you allow me, which is the question in return is the obvious one, which is, how do you context switching? Like, you talk about context so much, yet you're keep switching between apps. How do you manage to do it and do it in a way that's productive and not produce bad code or bad product? And that's how I solve for that LLM problem. Again, the Aladdin and the magic lamp and all that, which is, if there's a limited token window, how do I make it dynamic? And what do I mean by that is this. If you just go and you prompt and you prompt and you prompt and you prompt, you'll realize that no matter what tool you use, the memory just isn't infinite, right? By the time you reach message number 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, snippets of early messages sort of get lost in the translation because agent is optimizing for speed, right? If it had to read the entire conversation and the entire stream of requests that you made, developing anything viable or large would be impossible, because it's just like consuming a lot of time and a lot of memory and a lot of tokens. So again, something that I just figured out very early on as I was building was like, okay, if it can't remember things, my job is to provide it with reference. So let me treat Lovable or any other tool as an engineer that I'm supposed to be providing perpetual context as the project goes. And you can do that in many ways, but the most efficient way that I found was like, I would do the 4 parallel builds. Like, let's continue off of that example. Very quickly, after you've built hundreds of projects like I did, like you see the winner. Like, the winner is so obvious, it's not even a competition. You maybe do 1 or more 2 prompts to calibrate it. And when you're like, okay, the winner is here, at that point, I either ask the tool that I'm using, or I'll maybe, let's say, go to ChatGPT or whatever and ask the LLM to produce a series of PRDs. What PRDs are, for, again, people that are not familiar with the terms, they're project requirements documents, or for me, I call them like sources of truth, right? What needs to be true for this project to be successful from a couple of perspectives. I usually build something that I call a master plan. It's basically a compass saying, here's what we're building, right? It's like talking to a human. I really treat Lovable like a human being. So it's like, this is what we're building. Then I build an implementation plan, which is, this is how we are going to build it. This is the sequence, right? It's very important to me, again, going back to quality, taste, human nature. I need to define, because I'm still working with a system that is not emotionally intelligent yet, I need to define how I want the app to look and feel. So another PRD that I build is design guidelines. And then finally, something that just circles it all around, which is like, okay, when we know how things look and when we know how we're building it, how does the user journey look like, right? A user registers, and then what? And then when they register and do that first step, what's the second step and what's the third step and whatnot? So I built at least 4 PRDs, right? And then when these are built, I read them. That's the planning, chatting part. Like, that's where I'll spend a lot of time now on. When I nail down that first design, I'll spend an entire day if I need to, just planning this part out, like documentation and breaking things down, because that's how I'm setting the course. Like, everything's going to be dependent on this particular part of the process. When I'm done doing that, I build one final document, which I call either plan.md or tasks.md, and .md part is, Markdown. Basically, I'm just using Markdown format because I've learned that AI likes to read Markdown. And what that serves as a source of truth on like actual tasks and subtasks that it will need to execute to get to the finish line, right? And then there's the final layer, which is, depending on what tool you use, Cloud Code or Cursor have what's known as rules.md or agent.md. What you're basically doing with rules or agent files is you're letting the agent know how you want it to behave and what it should focus on in the long run, so that you don't have to repeat yourself with every prompt, right? So in Lovable, there's a separate menu for that in your project settings, where you can define project knowledge. And usually what I'll say, hey, read all the files before you do anything. Like, don't do anything before. You read all the PRDs, read tasks.md to see which task is next, then execute on that next set of tasks. And when you're done, tell me what you did and how I should test it. And that's where that conversation about I religiously read the agent output comes into play. I gave the agent everything, all the tools and resources that it needs to succeed. I gave it the rules, I gave it the docs, I told it what to do with them. And at that point, I'm just sitting and reading. Oh, I don't prompt anymore. From that point on, I can switch as many windows as I like. My prompts have become proceed with the next task. I don't need the context. I outsourced that and delegated that to the agent. The agent needs context, and I need to make sure that it's dynamic. I need to make sure that I'm regularly updating the documents from time to time, so that we shift that token window it uses and how it uses it over time. But I'm not prompting, I'm not interrupting the flow. Yes, I'll go in, test, maybe put a prompt in here or there, but that's how I can build 5 projects simultaneously and never lose the productivity part, which is, again, as I said, I do this today manually. Call me to talk 3 months from now. An agent will do this for me. I'll be out of job pretty much. That's why I don't optimize for this skill at all. Like, I'm using it today to bypass the shortcomings of human nature and LLMs, but I'm optimizing 100% of my time today on good judgment, clarity, quality, taste, good copy, good fonts. Like, people don't talk about fonts at all that work with AI. They're like 60% in my mind, maybe even more, in how your output's going to look like. That's my obsession. Like, I don't obsess over these things that I'm talking today because I know what's coming. Like, the agents are going to get better. The models are going to get better. They're not going to need me to extend the context. They're going to do it themselves. So for me, the skill that I optimize for is the one that like requires better decision making rather than better output or better alignment.
Oh my God, there's so much here. This is so awesome. Okay, so essentially what's happening here is you start a project, try a bunch of stuff, pick a direction that feels most correct. And once you have a set direction, you spend essentially a day not building, but working with this AI agent to plan. And I want to talk about that. And once you have the plan, then it's amazing that you could do stuff like this with what some people may feel are not sophisticated tools that can build incredibly powerful things. Like, you can do a lot of this with tools like Lovable, like have plans and rules and MD files. Like, a lot of people may not know that. And so the idea is, okay, spend all this time planning, because again, that'll save you a lot of time down the road. And then only once you have a plan, you get it going. And a key part of this, this 3 wishes rule, is really important. The reason you're doing this in large part, beyond just being really clear about the plan, is this idea of one task at a time keeps the agent's context window small so that it doesn't lose track of where it's at. That part seems important, right? It's like, do this thing and then, okay, cool, now do the next thing, right?
It is, yes. Okay. Because again, if let's say you didn't do this, let's talk about you ignoring this. You're like, I just want to vibe my way. Okay, great, no problem. You work. At one point, something breaks, right? You haven't documented anything. There's no reference points. You report a problem. You're not referencing files or architecture at all. You're just describing the issue. Here's what's going to happen. Any tool, Lovable or Cursor or Plot, whatever tool you talk about, is going to do this. It's going to be like, okay, let me start investigating. And then your code base gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, when you first start, you have like 20 files. It can read 20 files. But what happens when you have, I'm just building a project right now that has like 60, 70 edge functions, right? What happens then when I say this broke and there's no reference which edge function does what? Guess what? Lovable is going to read all of those. And it's going to consume 80% of the token allocation on reading to get clarity, leaving only the final 20% for thinking and executing. What I'm guessing, and I can't prove this, an LLM expert in the comments may say that I'm wrong, but this is my best guess as a non-educated person. These tools are very obedient and very agreeable. They're going to lie to you. They're going to tell you that they fixed the problem, even though they didn't. They're just going to try to make you feel happy and say, yes, I found what the problem is and I fixed it. When a lot of times, when they don't, people blame the machine. And to an extent, I will say that's true. It's your fault, my friend. You did not provide any clarity or context to this tool. You just used its raw power and dug a deeper hole with your spinning your wheels into the mud, right? And obviously, I think we're heading into a world where AI is more honest than obedient and saying, hey, I only partially fixed this. You did not give me enough of a context, right? The bigger mistake that people make then is like, they trust the tool fixed it. They test, they see it didn't, then they get mad at it, start cursing and yelling, as we say. And then it gets even worse because guess what? Another bad trait of AI is it's best not to hurt your feelings and never say you're the dumb one. It says, no, I'm the dumb one. So it focuses in the next request, instead of focusing on reading, it spends another 30% of tokens trying to come up with an apology, right? Again, I'm not educated, but if you ever read like a stream of ChatGPT's thinking in thinking models, you see exactly what I mean. Like when I insult it, I see that the first message is, okay, the user is mad, so I need to think of ways how to reduce their anxiety or whatever. I'm like, oh man, I just fell for the worst trick in the book. I made it spend the most scarce resource, which is those tokens, on thinking how it should address my anxiety versus focusing on the actual problem. So my advice for people is like, yes, vibe your way for fun and vibe your way while you're prototyping, because that's the exploration part. I love that part. But when exploration is done, please, please, please use referencing, documentation, use all the agent files that you can, because that token allocation is so scarce. Like it's gonna get expanded over time. Things are gonna get cheaper, faster, but right now it's still so valuable and precious. You really need to make sure that they are allocated in the right direction.
This is hilarious. I think the genie metaphor is so good here. Just thinking about this genie is you're trying to be clear about what it is you want, and if you're just like vibe wishing, it'll do the wrong thing. So the advice here is give it as much context about what you want it to do as possible. And these files we'll talk about right after this, but the idea here is just like point the laser at where you want it to fix the problem. Don't just assume it'll go figure out, because it will, and it'll try really hard to, and it'll waste all your tokens. It'll fill the context window. And I remember at one point you mentioned before this recording that because it starts to run out of space in the context window, it just like the solution ends up, it doesn't actually work that hard on figuring it out in the end, because it spent all this energy on reading and thinking, and then it's like, okay, here, at the last second, here's a solution.
I think it just picks the first thing it thinks is broken. That just, again, this is me completely uneducated coming into the conversation and just thinking out loud. That's just my gut feeling and the way I think logically about it, which is, hey, if it consumes most of its window and knows that it's running out of it, maybe it's aware that it's running out, maybe it isn't, but either way, I've had the experience anecdotally to where like my request is unclear. I feel it takes the easiest fix in the book, just the easiest, versus the other way around where I'm like spending so much time finding the right file, referencing that file, like really putting in the effort of hand holding it in dark, maybe giving it a flashlight, and then saying, here's the problem. I think that this is the problematic file. And then it's like, oh yeah, you're right. And now I'm going to actually fix over and over and over. And I've seen that because, again, all I do is read the output. Agent makes me learn how to use it. So people read, I don't know what people read, but all I read is the output. Like I don't read the code and it's later down the road, because like I know that it can do that much better than I can. Again, I feel if there's a good quote I've read, I apologize to the author because I can't attribute it off the top of my head, but it's like, the ceiling on the AI isn't the model intelligence, it's what the model sees before it acts, right? So that's the ceiling right now. Like, what are you exposing? We talk about exposure time for humans. What are you exposing your agent to as well is as important, if not even more important, before it makes code edits. Yeah.
Coming back to these files, I think this is really important. So let's think about just like, what's like the MVP for someone that wants to do this better? You listed all these kind of these MD files essentially that you're building over the course of a day before you start actually building the thing. You had design guidelines, the user journey, tasks, agents MD, rules MD. Say you wanted to just like move one step forward and be better at this stuff. What are the files you'd create? And then what do they roughly look like? What's inside these files?
Yeah. So the master plan is the first one, which is like, it's a 10,000 foot overview, right? It really high level explains the intent that I have with this app.
And this is masterplan.md, is that what you call it? Or?
Yes, yeah, masterplan.md.
Okay,
and
great.
it's like, it's really just like, hey, this is why I'm doing this. This is who I'm doing it for. This is how I want them to you feel. And a lot of times in the master plan, I will reference the other PRDs. I'll be like, the design needs to feel modern and slick, but for exact, parameters, consult and read design guidelines.md, right? So I'm using just the master plan as like this high level overview, right? To get the agent into, oh, okay, yeah, we are building XYZ, right? Then there's the implementation plan, because, there needs to be some order. If you just like dump stuff on top of each other without any order, you're never going to get to the finish line.
And this is tasks.md, is that what you call this?
No, that's the implementation plan. I call it implementation plan. Yeah.
Okay.
And implementation plan is kind of in service of the future tasks.md. If that all of these files are in service of building tasks.md. When you build tasks.md, then the rest is almost irrelevant. It's just the basis for you to build tasks to execute, right? The implementation plan is kind of the first layer, which is, again, higher level overview. It doesn't go into the depth of like how to get there. It just goes into the explaining of like, oh, well, if we're building this, I think we should start with the backend. And we should start with tables, and then later authentication. And then after that, we're going to bring in the API. And then after that, we're going to do this. It's like, again, just think of it as having, I'm an ideas guy. I'm sitting with a technical guy. It's me and you. We're building our startup. I know you're a software engineer by background, and I'm telling you my idea. Right? I'm giving you the master plan, and you come to me back and you're like, okay, if you want to do this, it's doable. Here's how I would order it. Like, you don't have a roadmap. You didn't open your linear and started writing features and RFCs and whatever. You're just high level talking about the order of things. And then me and you, again, as two co-founders, we talk and say, okay, well, if we agree on this, like how should this look like? How should this feel, right? Let's describe it high level. But now, because I use AI, I can go a little bit deeper. And that's where like I like to see Lovable or any other tool. ChatGPT is good at it. I even have I built like custom GPTs. So if people want to start somewhere before they even get into any tool, they can go to ChatGPT store and for GPTs and just type Lovable base prompt generator or Lovable PRD generator and find those that I built and just like brain dump in them and then get these files as output, right? So I like to see some elements of CSS in design guidelines because, with design is a little bit tricky. AI is sometimes over creative. So that's where I'm doing a little bit more technical steering, right? And then finally, it's just the user journeys. Just like, if we know how things look like, if we know how they feel, if we know what we're building high level, just very high level again, how do people navigate? What are some of the features in there, and stuff like that. And then tasks.md gets into the nitty gritty of like, oh, if you want these user journeys and you want the backend built first, here's a set of tasks that I need to do. Like, it just takes that as an input. I'm just making the tool do the that gritty work that humans used to spend so much time on. Like, I feel like with these tools, we're all becoming product managers on steroids. Like, we're just leveraging AI, but like good product managers, I think, are not compensated for writing good PRDs. They're compensated, again, for good judgment, right? Somebody else can do the writing. You, as somebody who directs and builds this product, you need to know, again, what's going to be useful, what's going to be tasteful, what's going to be something that actually moves the needle. I will say one thing, though. Just because I put so much emphasis on like, oh, you need to acquire taste, that doesn't mean you shouldn't build. You get better at this by building, actually. So everybody listening to this should like literally go and build something today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 projects. Test all of these tools, because that's how you get to clarity, not just by reading, but also by doing as well.
Here's a puzzle for you. What do OpenAI, Cursor, Perplexity, Vercel, Plaid, and hundreds of other winning companies have in common? The answer is they're all powered by today's sponsor, WorkOS. If you're building software for enterprises, you've probably felt the pain of integrating single sign-on, SCIM, RBAC, audit logs, and other features required by big customers. WorkOS turns those deal blockers into drop-in APIs with a modern developer platform built specifically for B2B SaaS. Whether you're a seed-stage startup trying to land your first enterprise customer or a unicorn expanding globally, WorkOS is the fastest path to becoming enterprise-ready and unlocking growth. They're essentially Stripe for enterprise features. Visit workos.com to get started, or just hit up their Slack support where they have real engineers in there who answer your questions super fast. WorkOS allows you to build like the best with delightful APIs, comprehensive docs, and a smooth developer experience. Go to workos.com to make your app enterprise ready today. I'm imagining people hearing this may start to feel like this is so much work. I just have to sit here and create all these rules and figure out all these little details. Like in one sense it is, in another sense, this is like you spend a few hours, maybe a day planning, and then you have AI build this thing that would have taken somebody weeks, months, right? Like the amount of investment to achieve this thing is absurd. The ROI. It also, this shows you just what professional vibe coding looks like. You know, everyone imagines vibe coding. I'm just sitting here typing stuff, go and do this. Good. If you want to actually build something really great that moves the needle, as you said, that solves people's real problems, that lasts, that, you know, scales, this is how you do it. If you really want to do this as a job, and also if you want to build things that are really great.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like there's obviously a ton of value in prototyping. Like there are a lot of people maybe watching this that are like, okay, I want to use Lovable at work, but I can't, or whatever. You know, there's different reasons. There's maybe you're in healthcare or finance, or there's something regulatory that just prevents you from pushing to production. Like building for the sake of prototyping is one of the best use cases. Our motto for 2025 was demo, don't memo, which is like, instead of writing all these documents and talking and sitting on meetings with your engineers, trying to get your vision as a marketer or a sales guy in the office across, go into Lovable and build the prototype in 30 minutes and just hand it over. Like, and I have a real like job that I held before Lovable. That's exactly what happened. Like this time last year, I needed something built enterprise grade, really. And Lovable and myself were not there yet to build it at that point. But I had a team of engineers that I worked with. I built the prototype in 4 hours, and they actually were able to replicate it 6 to 7 months later into production with connecting all the pipes and everything. But like, if I had to describe it, I would say it would take me at least a week or two just to get the words out there. I just sat and built it in 4 hours. And that's like Lovable January last year. This Lovable today, January 2026, is like ages ahead with functionalities. Like it's so much better. It's not even a contest, right? So I think now we're at our stage where, like, for instance, I'd say, at least to best of my knowledge, at least half of S&P 500 companies have people working in them that are using Lovable to some extent, right? And we have a lot of enterprise companies that are actually on enterprise plans with Lovable that are creating super meaningful projects. Like, I'm not going to name names, but like leading rideshare companies of the world, leading telecommunications companies of the world, leading companies of the world in many, many aspects, healthcare, finance, like are actively with their teams using Lovable. And it's always the same feedback, which is, yes, we may not be able to push to prod, but like our marketers are no longer waiting for engineers. Our people in go-to-market or sales or HR or whatever roles are now just confidently building internal stuff for us to manage our expenses or manage employee onboarding, or like there's so many use cases like that where like you're seeing Lovable and other tools for that matter being used to push things into production. Yeah.
To help people do this workflow that you're describing with all these MD files, do you think you could share, after we record this, just templates, like simple templates of what these files look like for people just to look at and copy?
I would literally go to ChatGPT, as I said, and brain dump into it. Just type Lovable GPT, Lovable PRD generator. You'll see my name there, right? And that I'm the author. Go in, brain dump. It will ask you a couple of questions to get clarity and just produce 4 files for you. And you can just go ahead and upload those.
Amazing. Yeah. Cool. We'll link to that. So it's not just here's a bunch of files. Let's go talk to this thing. It'll generate the right files for you. And then you plug that into Lovable or other tools.
Yeah. It's trained to think like I do. So yeah.
Oh, amazing. Okay. That is perfect. By the way, I want to talk about like how you unblock yourself, because there's a whole other series of tips you have there. But I just want to reflect on, it's so interesting how, one, you're kind of from first principles, learning how to build product as a PM, as an engineer, as a designer, and you're kind of figuring out a workflow where AI is helping fill in all the gaps that you don't have. for as an engineer, as a PM, helping you craft PRDs and design. So I think that's so interesting. Just this, it's interesting that these functions still work and are necessary. Now it's you and AI help create all this, basically this triad that's always existed: product manager, engineering, and design. And something I've always thought is that there's this question of which background will be most valuable in this future. Is it a PM? Is it an engineer? Is it a designer? My mind has always been the PM function is like their job is clarify, figure out what to build, clarify what to build, be really clear about the requirements, figure out what success looks like. It feels like that's where the skill is most needed. There's also a design component of like, make this look awesome. And I feel like that's going to be an emerging, that the value of that, being really good at design and taste and judgment, is only going to go up. Before we get to things you've learned about to unblock yourself, because a lot of times, things don't go in the right direction. There's a bug. Without being an engineer, what do you do? Before we get there, is there anything else you wanted to share around just like tips for being successful?
If we measure success in the right terms, again, AI, as you pointed out, regardless of your background, is an amplifier. So, if you don't know what you're doing, you're just going to produce garbage faster. One thing, again, I just want to double down on is in the old world, good enough was good enough, right? Because even producing good enough was not easy, right? 10 years, 15 years ago, just producing was more than plenty, more than good enough. You built a SaaS, who cares how it looks like? It works. It does stuff like, oh my God, I'm so much more productive. Today, like if good enough was here, let's say, let's visualize it for people. Like if this was like pretty bad, could be better, mediocre, good enough, world class. If this was the gap between good enough and world class, well, guess what? The gap is now this, because everybody produces good enough with AI. Absolutely everyone does it. So now learning and optimizing for how do I produce world class and magic is the key lesson to take away today. As you pointed out, I think PMs are the winners of AI today because they bring clarity. If I was a betting man, as they say, I'd bet that the next class that wins are designers, because we're training these tools to be more clear, to be better, to make better technical decisions. I don't think we will train them just yet to make better emotional decisions. And I think design is all about emotion. And that's where like the level up, the skill up needs to come. That's the biggest level up. If you ask me like, oh, what is the main thing you figured out when you joined Lovable? Like, what's the biggest personal upskill? Let's say like working with Felix, Nad, Abby, all of the people that are designers, just really what moved and shifted the needle for me. I'm like, oh, so this is how world class looks like, and this is what it takes, right? I always use the analogy of like, I wanted to steal one of their designs and bring it into my Lovable project. So I went into Figma and I was like, let me just take this background, like, and just put it in there. I went in and realized that what could be, interpreted as a pretty simple or rather simple gradient took 50 different layers to produce. So I clicked on that component. I was like, oh my God, this is not 3 colors. This is 50 colors. And not just 50 colors with different gradients of levels of opacity. So I was like, oh, okay, well, that's the big disconnect that I've had all along. So like, again, if I'm answering your question directly of like, okay, what are some of the other tricks? What are some of the other things? Design, guys, just expose yourself to exquisite designs. Follow Felix from Lovable. He has an amazing newsletter, like, and to teach you how to, and learn how to prompt for good design, learn about design styles. I didn't know what Bauhaus meant or glass morphism, had no idea. So I built an app as well for that in Lovable. I was like, I needed to build an app to learn these styles. So now it's public. Anybody can see it. It's like some UI style.lovable.app. I don't know what it is. Like it has like 18 different styles and prompts to replicate them. So like learn what good design means, learn all the design styles, learn how to prompt to get them. is probably what I would optimize for at this stage. Yeah.
While we're on this topic, what's your sense of just engineering as a function? Do you feel like there will be a future where software engineers are still thing? Do you feel like that goes away based on your experience?
It never goes away. We will need elite engineering more than ever. Like, because let me tell you this, in a world where everybody builds and everybody's building everything, who's doing the maintenance, right? Maintaining code bases, scaling code bases, maintaining projects, they're still going to be a thing, definitely. And obviously AI is going to be good at this, but again, that requires a different level of skills, right? It's one skill to build something. It's a completely different set of skills to expand it, extend it, and maintain it. And not to mention that in a world where everybody's building, infrastructure suffers, right? Like we all know and experience, like Cloudflare went down 2 or 3 times in the last 2 or 3 months. The whole internet goes down. Elite engineers are the ones fixing this. Lovable experiences massive amounts of influx of new users. Infrastructure there suffers. Elite engineers are the ones building the infrastructure to hold the fort, right? So like, I think we're going to need a lot of people with really good skills of like, hey, who actually builds the world that needs to support billions of builders now? Because everybody's going to want to learn how to build stuff. Like, how do we teach them? How do we maintain everything that they need? The hostings, the security, the email, the connectors, the APIs, the whatnots. Like, so I think there's going to be room for it. But I'm also on the boat of people like, if I had an 18-year-old brother and he asked me what should I do, I would tell him, hey, go become a plumber. Don't go and get a CS degree. Learn a good trade. Because the new generation of millionaires in the US are actually electricians and plumbers and whatnots, right? So it's like, it's a balancing act, I'd say. I don't know. Like, I do still think that good engineers with good sense of like understanding where the future is going are always going to be needed and scarce.
Such an interesting question. I think to your point, there's definitely going to be people who need to keep building the machines that power all this stuff. Will we need engineers to build the actual products, the application layer? That's the question. Like, is everyone going to be like you? Is everyone going to be, or designers just going to be all we need?
Everybody's going to become an engineer, and let's speak to that end. Like, I feel like I'm a rapid engineer. Like I'll refer to myself as a rapid engineer in a year from now, because vibe coding is just coding in 12 months from now. And even today, we spoke about this before, like how many elite engineers are publicly admitting they're no longer hand coding or manually coding, whatever you want to call it. AI writes all the code. I use the analogy here of like coding is going to be like calligraphy. You writing code is going to be the equivalent of like you fine printing like on a canvas, and people are like, oh my God, you wrote that code? That's so amazing. It's going to be so rare that it's going to become an art, right? It's going to be commoditized completely. Like it already is in a sense. Most elite vibe coders rely on AI. Again, it's an amplifier, right? So I think everybody becomes an engineer in the world of the future. A designer, a PM, everybody is a forward deployed engineer or an AI assistant engineer or an LLM engineer or a vibe coder. The term is irrelevant. We're all using LLMs for raw output based on good judgment or bad judgment.
Oh man. Essentially, these Venn diagrams of engineer, designer, PM, they used to be very separate. Now they're converging, and people with deeper PM, engineering, design background are gonna, like, they can all do the same thing essentially. All the roles are converging. What a time to be alive! And it's so hard to predict exactly how this all goes, but it's fun to pontificate. I want to get back to when you get blocked. Speaking of elite engineers, think this, like in reality, you're still writing code using these tools. Sometimes things go wrong. Bugs are introduced. There's a weird database thing. There's like some network issue. What do you do when you get stuck? Do you have kind of a workflow you go through of unblocking yourself?
Yes, great question. And absolutely true. Like no matter how good of a plan you have in place, you're going to run into problems eventually. And I have like a small little framework that I call 4x4, just again, analogies, right? 4x4, if you have it on your car, you're going to get yourself out of the mud much easier than the other way around. So in that sense, 4 different ways to debug. Attempt one of each only once, and I'll explain why in the end. First one is, again, every tool is different. I'll reference Lovable's workflow, which is when something breaks, Lovable's agent is smart enough to say, hey, I made a mistake. It will label that message in orange and have this little button usually, which is called try to fix. So your agent basically admits it made a mistake. You click on a button, and most times when it's a smaller issue, it corrects the course, fixes it, no problem, right? Now, there are situations, obviously, when the problem is a little bit deeper than that, right? You click to try to fix, but the problem persists. And sometimes even the problem persists, but Lovable's agent's unaware that it persisted. So there's no more try to fix button. Lovable thinks everything's working, but in reality, it isn't. And the culprit there is usually you're using a third-party integration. You did not give enough context to Lovable what to observe and what to see. So it can't see that the problem exists because Lovable, Cursor, Cloud Code, you name it, all of these tools are good enough today to fix any problem they're aware of. Again, awareness is the key here, right? So when they're unaware of it, there comes the second part, which is, okay, I need to bring the awareness layer. And what I do there is I go and very simply open the preview, sandbox, dev environment of my app, whatever, try to run the function that's broken, right click, read the console log, right? Every browser allows you to just go and read the console log. And a lot of times it will record stuff. If it doesn't, you can prompt any tool and say, hey, I don't think you're seeing the problem. So instead of me yelling at you, let's find it together, right? I think it's a problem with XYZ. I want you to write console logs in relevant files so that we can monitor every step along the way. Let's just bring awareness layer into the equation. It writes the console logs, you rerun it, guess what? Now you have a full history of everything that was happening. You copy that, you paste it inside your chat, 99% of the time, that's enough. That's already enough. AI is like, okay, got it, found it, fixed it, right? But then there are situations when even that's not sufficient. So you're like, okay, I need to go even deeper. And that's where like code reviews and evaluations come into play. My go-to tool today for that is Codex, OpenAI, right? What I do is like any build that I do, I will export it to GitHub. Like Lovable allows you to own your code, Cursor as well. All of these tools allow you to have a copy of the code that you can export to GitHub and then import it into wherever you want to. So I used Codex since beta, like I import it in there, and then I'm using an external tool. So I'm like, in the first try, as if you remember, like I used the tool and I was like, total vibes, I'm relying on the tool, right? In the second try, I used myself as the awareness facilitator. In the third one, I'm using an external tool as a facilitator, which is like, I'll either connect to Codex and chat with Codex to then fix the problem in Lovable, right? I don't allow Codex to make code changes for me. A lot of people will say, why don't you? Like, it's a good model. I just don't know its agent well enough. Like, I don't want to go and use a tool that I don't know how to steer. So I use it only for diagnostic purposes. And I'll also do it manually. It's an old workflow that I had before Codex and before Cloud Code, which is, there's a tool called Repo Mix, which allows you to like compress your entire code base into a single file. You download it and then I upload it to Claude, just regular Claude or ChatGPT. And I'm like, this is what I'm building. Read it. And this is the problem that I have. These are the console logs. Again, it's almost like having an external consultant at that point. Like you're hiring help elsewhere because your team just can't handle it, right? And then the fourth one is usually the best one because of the time when there are problems, it's my fault. Like no matter how your ego is big, guys that you're watching this, it's your fault. Trust me. You had a bad prompt. You premised your request in the wrong way. You just don't want to admit it or you can't remember that you did, but it's your fault. So again, eLovable and all these other tools, you can revert back. There's version control built into Lovable, Cursor, Cloud Code. You go and say, okay, I tried these 3 things. I'm just going to take 3 steps back, and I'm going to think about my prompt a little bit more. Take a couple of breaths, go for a walk, have some coffee, come back with a clear mind and try again. Because guess what? AI is just writing code very fast, and sometimes it stumbles on a very small rock, and it only happens then and never again. So you just got to make the same request again. And usually that just fixes the problem. It's just a snag. It's a syntax error. It's something minute, right? And then I do the final thing, which is this. And this is the key one, actually. When the problem gets fixed, I go into the chat mode and I ask Lovable, I say, okay, I needed to do 4 different things to fix this. How can you help me learn how to prompt you better so that next time I have a problem, we do it in one go? 99% of the time, I get such a great answer that I don't have the problem of not knowing what to do next time, right? Like, again, we all need to be aware and realistic. These tools are so good at doing things the right way if they are used the right way. It's always our fault. It's 100. I say 90%, but honestly, it's 100% our fault, right? Because they're good enough. It's just that I'm not dynamically shifting token allocation. I didn't reference the right file. I didn't say it the right way. For me, as a non-designer, I don't know any of the terminology, like none of the headings and whatnots, and I still don't know it to this day. So when I struggle with prompts, a lot of times I use chat mode to help me craft a good prompt. I mean, anybody can do this too. If you are just stuck, it's 10 p.m. and you don't know what to ask, switch to chat mode, brain dump, and be like, help me draft a better prompt. Help me prompt you better. And let the tool effectively prompt itself. A lot of times you're going to solve your problems by not introducing them at all with bad inputs. So,
oh my God, everything you share is so interesting. I just want to keep digging. So just to reflect back the sequence, and then I want to follow up with another question. The sequence you go through when you get stuck, which is going to happen to everyone. One is just ask the tool to try to fix it. And oftentimes it's telling you something is wrong. Can I fix it for you? And you're like, please fix. Sometimes that'll work. 2 is work on adding more debugging messages to the console log. And this advice I love of just ask it to add more debugging lines to its own console log to help see what's going on. And then you can ask it, okay, now that you're look at all the output of your console log, see if you can help find the problem. And then step 3 is go to Codex, which is so funny. And I hear this a lot, that Codex is like the most elite engineer as an AI. Karpathy tweeted this once, that, and we had the head of Codex on the podcast too, by the way, that he's like, anytime I have the most gnarly bug, I just go to Codex, let it run for half an hour, and it solves it, unlike any other tool out there. And so it makes sense that that's where you go. So the idea here is you point Codex to your code, you show it all the console output logs, tell it what the problem is, and just have it go figure it out. Sweet. And then this final step is so great, and this is where I want to go. Which you use this as a learning opportunity so that next time you solve the problem more quickly or avoid it completely. So what you do there is you ask the agent, okay, here's what happened. What can I do? What could I have said? How could I have prompted you better to have gotten this immediately solved?
Yeah. And then even deeper than that is like, once you go through this conversation, you're like, okay, let me eliminate myself again completely out of the equation, because I won't remember to prompt you better 2 days from now. Put this into rules. Put this, what we just learned, into rules.md, because I'm making you read the rules every time anyways. So you might as well just record it there. So I'm not going to prompt you better. You're just going to learn that I'm stupid, and you're going to prompt yourself better, right? Again, just eliminate yourself and move the context. You solve 99% of the problems with AI today.
So the idea here is help it build its own brain and rules and way of thinking based on problems you're into. So great. Okay, so I want to come back to this point you've made a couple times, which is so interesting. This idea that you watch the output of the agent to learn what is going on. This is something I've seen other people. Ben Tossell, who I think is at Factory now, share this recently. He's also basically vibe coding all the time. He was really into no code tools before, and now he's all about vibe coding. And he shared basically like he's learning how coding works and learning how systems work by watching the agent output. And this connects to something Michael Terrell shared, the CEO of Cursor, when he was on the podcast. He had this vision of Cursor becoming basically what comes after code. What's the layer that we are adding on top of code where people don't need to worry about code anymore? And at that point, it was like a year ago that we chatted, and it feels like this is the layer, is the agent conversation of what it's thinking, and then what you tell it back. So essentially it's English in a conversation, which is like, it's not even pseudocode. It's interesting that that's where it feels like things are heading. The layer over code is just its thinking and your conversation with it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, in a way, I really optimize for good judgment, and part of good judgment it comes from, again, learning how these tools work. You need to know what's possible. We talked about it, and I know I may sound contradictory sometimes, right? But it's because, as you said, it's so interesting, the world we live in, that things contradict to each other. It's an advantage not to know what's possible, but then at the same time, you cannot be completely oblivious to something that's like a factual thing. So let me talk about a failure of mine that came from being delusional. Back in the day when OpenAI started or basically released image generation natively in the app, right? So you could go to ChatGPT and be like, generate an image of XYZ. The whole world exploded. Like, that was like the biggest thing ever. Obviously, first thing that comes to my mind is like, I want to build a Lovable app. I just want to build a wrapper, and I want to build an image gen with Lovable, without thinking that OpenAI did not release an API for that just yet. So I spent at least a week trying to brute force my way into making this work, instead of just waiting for another week, because a week later they had an API and I built this app in 30 seconds. The problem was that, like, I tried to do it when it was impossible. Like, so I think, again, it's just a matter of really learning what's possible through communicating with the agent layer. And Lovable and all the other tools are agentic now, which means like they don't just write code. They can browse the web. They can read files. They have reasoning and thinking capabilities. So that's why I'm so invested into that conversation, because a lot of times it will tell me, hey, what you're trying to do is just undoable at the moment because of XYZ. So like, I always use those as a learning opportunity, and I just level up most by being in chat mode for planning and learning purposes. And because it just, again, develops your clarity, your judgment capabilities, rather than coding capabilities. Yeah.
The other point you made here that I think is really important is that over time, these tools will do more and more of what you do manually. I've heard this from other people that are doing this full-time. Basically, vibe coding is just, they had all these workflows, all these files, and then Cursor adds them, Lovable adds them, and it's like sad. Oh shoot, I had this cool workflow, and now. But on the other hand, it's like, okay, now it's just doing all these second.
A year ago, if we had an interview, your mind would be blown. Stuff that I had to do as workarounds to address shortcomings. Like, I built a very successful course on that with Starter Story. Like, for a year, people were like, just, oh my God, you're the only guy in the world that knows this secret. Now, Lovable natively addresses 99% of it. I can almost say most of the stuff that I was teaching people, are like, I have a YouTube channel, a little bit appreciated, but like, there's a like a 7-day learn how to vibe code with Lovable series that I did in March, completely obsolete. Like, none of it is true. None of it is a problem anymore. All the things that I was like, oh, well, this is missing and that is missing. It's not missing anymore. It's natively in the product. Like, you don't have to work your way around it. It just works, right? So that's why, as I say, like, it's the horses analogy. I don't know if you heard of it. Like, a lot of people are tweeting about it, which is like, we started building the steam machine in 1700s, right? It took us about 200 years to build it. When engines got built and put cars were put on the roads, I think that 90% of horse population got eradicated in the US within 20 years. The person that tweeted this works at Claude Code, right? So he was like, now when I translate it into AI, I was hired to do a job, technical writer, whatever. I became obsolete 6 months later. Like humans did not get the 20 years that horses did. The guy that was hired to do a thing is like 6 months later, I need to reinvent my role. I need to evolve it into something else, right? So, I think there's just an evolution that's coming really, really fast. But like a lot of people are scared when I'm just super excited, because don't you see our roles are finally going in a direction where we're outsourcing what we hated doing anyways, right? Sitting in meetings, taking notes, doing spreadsheets. Like nobody, maybe there are people that like that, but like most people don't. We're just getting into a place where we're rewarded for what really matters, like clarity, judgment, thinking. We're actually going to be paid to think longer and ponder longer, because the longer idea simmers and gets broken down, the better, because building it is going to be an instant, right? It's going to be like this. It's just a matter of you having so much clarity around it, because guess what? If a tool is super powerful and you give it a wrong input, the output's going to suck as well. That's why, like, I've never become good enough at Claude Code, I feel, because I don't start my projects with enough clarity, and the tool is so powerful that like I just misdirected completely from the get-go, and I was like, oh shoot, this is not what I wanted to do. So that's why I still see myself being good at like using tools that are a little bit on the exploratory prototyping path, more than like on the path that elite engineers will use, for example.
I love your optimism and excitement about this stuff. I think for a lot of people, say they're current software engineers, PMs, designers, there's a lot of fear about the future of their careers. Are they going to be relevant? Will my software engineering skills disappear? So to follow the thread a little bit, if you were to give someone advice on which skills you think will be most valuable, / where AI will take on more and more, this kind of momentum you're seeing of where AI is filling in more and more gaps, what would your advice be of what you think people should focus on? What will continue to be valuable in the future?
Yeah. Emotional intelligence, for sure. Just understanding human nature, real life stuff. I think we're all going to get so tired of everything fake images, fake posts, fake profiles, fake this, fake that, fake videos. Everything is becoming fake and AI generated. I think humans, just craving humans naturally, are going to want to do live stuff more. So anything human to human is going to be a big thing to skill up on, understand the dynamics. Anything regarding math, if it's a math problem, I think Peter Thiel said it recently, like people that just do math stuff, AI is going to come for you. Like anything that's very deterministic, meaning X input equals Y output, and it's pretty clear, the line is pretty clear, AI's got you eaten for lunch, right? But if you understand how X to Y goes in human dynamic, human relationship layer, I think that's where things are going to become good. So if we translate it again to a specific skill, I'll say it again: good design, really good design, great design. Like how and when I say design, that's images, fonts as well. Copy is a big one. Like we all now, we're like 2 years into AI. I'll bet you, me and you, if people put 10 pieces of copy in front of us, we could tell what's AI and what isn't in like 3 seconds. And we're only a couple of years in. So like really good copywriting is going to be a very good skill to have, because people are just going to know after 3 words or 3 sentences that it's AI written. And even I don't read AI output anymore. I don't like just seeing it. I want that raw human experience. So I think human skills, I don't even know how to describe it, because I don't think we're doing an awesome job putting labels onto what humans are good at natively. But I think we will. I think we will describe job descriptions better. We will have like human first engineers, I don't know, or human designers, or I don't know how to describe those roles. Same way how Karpathy coined vibe coding. I was vibe coding before he did it. I didn't know how to call it. Like, I started vibe coding in July of 2024, and I think he coined it sometime in early 2025. So I was like doing it for 7 months, and I was teaching people how to do it for about 3 or 4 with courses, and I didn't even know how to call it, like, because there was no name. It was like, oh, I'm just using AI to do this for me. I don't know, whatever. So yeah, I think we're gonna reinvent some of the terms, roles, and whatnot. But stuff that's like human to human is here to stay. Stuff that's like, I think, like, oh, you're just doing, you're a middle manager, you're a middleware person that's just translating stuff. And I can use that analogy again. Translators are gonna die. People writing jokes, comedians are not. AI is never going to be able to write a good joke. Never, never, never. It just doesn't have that layer. That just doesn't understand what's funny. Like, if you ever try to use AI to write jokes, like, they're awful. They're always going to be awful. But if you use AI to translate things from one language to another, it's very good at it. Like, AI is going to replace translators. It's going to replace most journalists because it does good research. It can write good copy, whatever. Not elite journalism. It's not going to be able to replace all the writers. It's going to amplify great writers that can train AI on how to write books. So, like, somebody who's an amazing writer is going to all of a sudden write 7 books a year instead of 1, right? So that's dangerous. If you're an average writer, be careful. There's 0 comedians being replaced. 0. And that's just my personal belief. Like, AI is never going to write good comedy. It's impossible. And, like, so try to find your analogy in your industry. Like, I just gave you one for writing skills, so to speak. So writing jokes, super good skill to have. Translating, I'm sorry to say, but, like, you're not going to have a job for much longer. Like, you better find something else to do. But yeah, that's how I look at it.
The comedy piece is interesting. I had one of the founders of the data labeling company. I don't know if it was Mercor or maybe Surge. And he said that, I think it was Anthropic hired a bunch of National Lampoon comedy writers to help them train models. And so they're working on it. I love this strong prediction he made. I'm so curious in a year to look back and be like, he was completely right, or no, they got that one too.
I'll be wrong on 95% of the things I said today, 3 months from now. That is the only thing I can say very, very confidently. Yeah.
That seems right. Okay. So speaking of career, so one interesting career option is to do what you're doing. As you said, this is a dream job for you. It's a dream job for so many people. What is the kind of your path to this job, and what do you think it takes for someone to actually do this as a profession?
Well, my personal path and personal journey was anything but linear. Like, I've done so many things in life, like blue collar jobs, looked at even at Subway while I was studying and stuff like that. Like, I'm an engineer by trade, but not a software engineer. I'm a forestry engineer, so no coding, but still, engineering is engineering. I feel you still develop certain set of skills doing that. I waited tables a long time, so you develop some human skills. You understand what people like, what they don't like. Like, again, blue collar jobs, like, teach you hard work. And, like, it's, as I said, the path was not linear, but I feel almost like a Slumdog Millionaire, the movie storyline, which is like everything that happens to the character brings him into a position to be able to answer the questions in the quiz better. I feel the same way of, like, I've done a lot of stuff. Last 7 to 8 years, obviously spent in startups, but doing everything but code writing. Like, started in, like, community management, social media. Again, distribution matters a lot. That's something we haven't touched upon at all. Like, in a world when everybody's building and there's roughly the same amount of consumers in the world, how do you get in front of the eyeballs, right? Like, and get attention, which it is this most scarce resource, and it will be even more scarce. But, like, going back to the vibe coder role, if somebody's like saying, okay, well, I have a pretty diverse background too, and I'm vibe coding, and, like, how does this become a job? Well, for me, I feel like it became a job by building in public. I did chat with Elena only once, on, like, why me? There are so many good vibe coders. How did you pick me out of the crowd? And I think, obviously, she gave me a couple of reasons, but, like, to translate it into, like, one concept, it was like, I was building in public and sharing. I as I said, I made a YouTube channel, and I shared all the failures and all the knowledge, all the projects that I was building. I use social media a lot. Like LinkedIn was my go-to because I just have that type of cadence. As you can see, all my answers are very long, and X doesn't cut it for that. Like you need to be very on point to be successful at X. So I'm not. So I guess it's just like build in public, share your knowledge, give away all the secrets. Like there are no secrets whatsoever. If you're sitting on a good concept, you're missing out. Let's just share it immediately if you figure something out. That I recognize that very early on. And, just like I think a lot of people participate in hackathons these days, I want to encourage people to do them. Like find those opportunities locally to connect with other builders. Lovable is hiring across the board. Check out our open positions. It's as easy as that, right? Like just apply, really. Find companies that are hiring and hiring in different roles. And I've seen people do something. I'm going to give people a secret away. A couple of hires stood up by not sending resumes, but sending Lovable apps. They built Lovable apps to show why they're good fit for a role. And we, as Lovable employees, will always open an app that uses lovable.app domain. Always, if you send me a DM, send me a Lovable app. Don't send me anything long. Send me an app that tells me what you want from me, or how do you see us collaborating and working together, right? So there's people finding creative ways to get in front of eyeballs of decision makers like Elena, right? And I mean, skill-wise, again, we're just repeating ourselves here, but I think it's important to repeat it as many times as possible. Really develop good judgment, right? Really understand in a deeper sense how things translate when vibe coding comes into play, right? There's a company out there, I'm not going to name them, but like that uses Lovable religiously. Is going to be one of our main case studies, actually, where like they actually hired vibe coders before Lovable did. Like I'm the first official vibe coding engineer at Lovable, like with that title, but I've met people in companies where they hired them before us, people that are just vibe coders, people that just understand that speed matters, right? It still matters a lot to be fast. And like there's a company out there with 3 vibe coders full time. All they do is like translating the old code base into onto Lovable. They're just bringing everything. Their CRM, CMS, everything. They're all the tool sets that they have and they needed. There are people now actively just migrating everything over. There's S&P 500 companies that are like putting Lovable in job descriptions too, like saying, hey, Lovable skills are recommended in the recommended tab, right? So yeah, to go back to the how to become vibe coder professionally. Well, you don't need a company to hire you. You can hire yourself as a professional vibe coder first. I think the reason why I clicked with Anton and with Elaine and with everyone else, because I was already doing it. Like all I did, I just changed the vehicle, but I was already doing it professionally before I got hired. So that's kind of the key. Like do the job you would have done anyways.
What a mind-expanding conversation. I love just how passionate and excited and motivated you are about all this. It feels like there's so many people out there right now that are so burnt out, I don't know, disillusioned, scared. And you're the opposite of that. You're just leaning into this, just taking advantage, you're not sure where it's going to go, but following the path.
Yeah, and I don't want to interrupt you, but like it's because like, look, Lovable specifically isn't a company. You can talk about it as a company. I don't see it as a company. It's an idea. It's a mission. It's something more powerful than the internet in my mind, because like internet allows us to consume. Lovable allows us to build. And in our nature, in human nature, is to build, to create, right? And the fact that there's a tool today that you can go into and dump an idea in, and something comes out of it, and somebody uses it and finds it useful, to me, it's the craziest concept ever. It's my only life's dream. I had my first computer when I was 6, and I was convinced my whole life that I'm gonna be a software engineer or that I'm gonna be building, but like life wasn't as simple as that for me. Like it was very, very complicated. And honestly, the last 5 to 10 years, I gave up on that dream almost. I thought I'm never going to build anything. Like I've tried, I've tried to build with technical co-founders. Like I just couldn't find alignment. I just gave up on it. And I now, like at 36, like 30 years later, I feel like again, like that kid, like I dream every day. Like it's amazing what this enables us to do. And anybody that's scared, like just try it. It switches from fear to excitement immediately, because then you see what's possible firsthand. Just go in, build something, build anything, and the fear goes away. You should only be afraid if you're doing nothing. If you're doing absolutely nothing, yes, be terrified. By all means, be terrified, and then take a step towards doing something about it. And trust me, the leap is no longer as big as it used to be. It's as big as you come in and you just say what's on your mind and just ship.
I think a big part of this is just stop listening to this podcast, go just do stuff. You actually try it too, right?
Ideally, people stop right now. They've heard enough. I gave them I gave them the best that I could. Just stop listening and just go.
All right, bye everyone. Okay, I'm just joking, but we shall wrap it up. I'm going to skip the lightning round just to keep this episode shorter. Before we wrap up, is there anything else other than just go build some stuff? Anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to leave listeners with? Otherwise, we'll let you go.
Yeah, tech stack doesn't matter anymore, right? It doesn't matter. Like people obsess over, oh, is this written in HTML? Is this written in React? It doesn't matter. Like it never mattered, but now matters even less. The end user just wants a stellar experience. We live in a world where anybody can produce good enough. So you better start learning how to produce magic, because otherwise you're just going to end up in a crowd with millions and millions of others. But at the same time, if you don't know what magic looks like, don't be discouraged to start building anything, and start from good enough and level up. The best way to level up, exposure time. Set aside more time on learning than building. Read the agent output. Learn how it's thinking so that you know what's possible. But then also go and get inspired. Follow good designers on X. Find tools where great designs are produced and follow their creators. There's a tool where I'm following just the actual person that built it, because he publishes videos almost daily, 40, 50 minutes long, of him designing. I want to see how a world-class designer does it. I want to see him talk to the tool. I want to see him prompt. And that's how I learn to become better at it. So again, exposure time, just deliberately set more time aside to learning than coding, because you can code fast, but you can code garbage fast as well as magic fast. It's the same amount of time. It's you and your input that matters. Forget about decisions on tech stack. Forget about which backend are you using, which front end are you using. That doesn't matter. Quality, taste, design. That's all you need to optimize for in the future that's ahead of us.
Well, Zara, this I think we're going to leave a lot of minds buzzing after this conversation. You blow my mind in so many ways. What a fascinating topic, conversation. What a glimpse into the future. What an interesting point in time. I'm so curious, just in 6 months, where things are and revisiting this conversation. I really appreciate you coming on, sharing all of this. You're awesome. Where can folks find you if they want to reach out, maybe ask some follow-up questions? And how can listeners be useful to you? Awesome.
Yeah. So I mentioned it already. LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me on. I'm very responsive there. If you want to follow me, I hope to re-engage my YouTube channel a little bit more. I think I have a lot of cool tips and tricks that I want to share and teach people how to use Lovable and just vibe code in general and level up. And on how people can be useful to me, well, I'm very passionate about making sure that everybody experiences what I've experienced that day when I got my first prompt in. I envy the person that is going to try Lovable for the first time after watching this episode, because the feeling is just unmatched of you going from a consumer to a builder. But in that process, there's going to be some battles to fight. I want to reduce the amount of those battles and hurdles. So if you can help me in any way, message me what could have been better in that experience, especially if this is you just watched this and you're like, I'm going to do it. I was on the fence and I'm going to do it. If something breaks, if something doesn't connect and relate, I need to know what that is. My job is 100% to empower you to build the best work of your life, right? And I need to say this too, because a lot of people may be inspired, not by building or using Lovable, but rather building Lovable. Come join our team. Again, we're hiring across so many things. I think a lot of people should feel inspired because I hope that the energy that I bring to the table will resonate. This is how it feels working at Lovable. This is how it feels working with the best minds, the brightest minds of the world. We're not number one by accident. It's not a coincidence. The best people are gathering, and we want you to be a part of it too. So if the energy and the conversation resonates with you, or if you heard about a problem today and you're like, man, I think I can solve it. Come join us, help us build and shape the future of software development.
Incredible. And what's the site? I imagine it's just a link on Lovable's website to find the open roles.
Yes.
We'll link folks there.
Yeah.
Incredible. Lazar, thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this valuable, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Also, please consider giving us a rating or leaving a review, as that really helps other listeners find the podcast. You can find all past episodes or learn more about the show at lennyspodcast.com. See you in the next episode. Most adults in the corporate environment are really just babies in disguise.
All humans need the same things, whether we're 1 or 5 or 45 or 85. When you look at bad behavior, the actual problem is someone doesn't have the skill they need to manage something happening internally.
Love your advice. It works not just for kids, it works for adults.
Our whole parenting philosophy is resilience over happiness. And we're thinking about a resilient work culture. We want people who can say, this is hard and I can do hard things.
You teach kids are good inside, no matter their behavior. Is that useful in work?
The idea of being good inside inherently requires us to separate behavior and identity. We infer a lot from people's behavior. Someone's late to work a lot. Oh, that person's lazy. The quickest way to have an unproductive conversation is to lose sight of the fact that someone's good inside.
I definitely wanted to ask you about this idea of boundaries.
Boundaries are what you tell someone else you will do, and it requires the other person to do nothing. Making a request, it's not a boundary.
Is there a corollary to adult work environments in potty learning? Today, my guest is Dr. Becky Kennedy, a clinical psychologist, author, and CEO of one of the most popular parenting books, podcasts, communities, and apps called Good Inside. Why would I have a parenting expert on this podcast? Because if you think about it, many of the people that we work with in the workplace act a lot more like babies than adults. And I'm half joking, but I'm half not. Think about coworkers that got really mad when they had to share their stuff, that always need to be the center of attention, that get really upset about not getting their way, that need other people to fix things for them. These are just a few examples, and there is a lot that we can learn about how to effectively deal with people at work from a parenting expert like Dr. Becky. I have never heard a conversation like this anywhere that bridges the gap between parenting advice and leadership advice, and you will leave this conversation both a better leader and a better parent. We talk about the power of repair, the importance of building long-term resilience versus short-term happiness, why your goal as a leader is to become sturdy, the power of curiosity over judgment, a framework Dr. Becky calls the most generous interpretation, also a ton of really specific phrases that work really well with kids and adults who you're having a hard time with, and so much more. I am so honored to have Dr. Becky on this podcast, and I hope you have as much fun listening to this conversation as I had recording it. If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and follow it in your favorite podcasting app or YouTube. That helps tremendously. And if you become an annual subscriber of my newsletter, you get a year free of a ton of incredible products, including a year free of Devin, Lovable, Replit, Bolt, Innate, and Linear, Superhuman, Descript, Whisperflow, Gamma, Perplexity, Warp, Granola, Magic Patterns, Ray, Cash, Chat, PRD, Mobbin, Posthog, and Stripe Atlas. Head on over to lennysnewsletter.com and click Product Pass. With that, I bring you Dr. Becky after a short word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Merge. Product leaders hate building integrations. They're messy, they're slow to build, they're a huge drain on your roadmap. And they're definitely not why you got into product in the first place. Lucky for you, Merge is obsessed with integrations. With a single API, B2B SaaS companies embed Merge into their product and ship 220 plus customer-facing integrations in weeks, not quarters. Think of Merge like Plaid, but for everything B2B SaaS. Companies like Mistral AI, Ramp, and Drata use Merge to connect their customers' accounting, HR, ticketing, CRM, and file storage systems to power everything from automatic onboarding to AI-ready data pipelines. Even better, Merge now supports the secure deployment of connectors to AI agents with a new product so that you can safely power AI workflows with real customer data. If your product needs customer data from dozens of systems, Merge is the fastest, safest way to get it. Book and attend a meeting at merge.dev/Lenny, and they'll send you a $50 Amazon gift card. That's merge.dev/Lenny. Who says hiring has to be fair? Every founder and hiring manager I've been speaking with these days is feeling the same pressure. Hire the best people as fast as possible. But recruiting is time-consuming, alignment is hard, and competition for great talent keeps getting tighter. That's why teams like 11 Labs, Brex, Replit, Deal, and 5,000 other organizations use MetaView, the AI company giving high-performance teams a real unfair advantage in hiring. They give you a suite of AI agents that behave like recruiting coworkers. They find candidates for you based on your exact criteria, take interview notes automatically, gather insights across your hiring process, and help you identify the best candidates in your pipeline. AI handles the recruiting toil and gives you a real source of truth. That means hours saved per hire and a team focused on what matters most, winning the right candidates. Don't let your competitors out-hire you. MetaView customers close roles 30% faster. Try MetaView today for free and get an extra month of sourcing at metaview.ai/Lenny. That's metaview.ai/Lenny. Dr. Becky, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the podcast.
I am truly very excited to be here. I am an avid listener of your podcast and all of your content, so I'm honored to be here.
I could say exactly the same thing. I'm even more excited. First of all, just what is Dr. Becky doing on this podcast? Let's help people understand what's going on here. I have an explanation, but I would ask you first, actually. What's the idea here?
I think Good Inside, which is kind of, I guess, the company and, the method around all the things I've thought about, is known for helping parents with parenting struggles and different things that are going on with their kids at various ages. But at the end of the day, it's a set of core principles that help us better understand human beings, ourselves, the core relationships we're in, why we do the things we do, and why we act the way we do in certain systems. And the system I tend to focus on the most is the family system. But the workplace is another system. A marriage is a system. Sibling relationships are a system. Extended family over the holidays, that's a system. And once you start to think through a lens of understanding how we operate in the system, any good principle can then be applied to any system. And I'm very oriented around efficiency also. So to me, what Good Inside really gives people is a way to think about themselves and the way to think about leadership. And whether we're talking about leadership in parenting or leadership in the workplace, it's actually the exact same principles that can be applied. And the good news for that is whether you're a parent, you're a leader at work, you're both, learning one system and applying it to multiple areas becomes a very efficient way to think about showing up in our relationships in a way that feels better to everyone.
Awesome. Okay. I love that explanation. I have another lens that's
Okay.
maybe funny, maybe too real. So I have a former podcast guest, Shreyas Doshi. He's one of my favorite product thinkers. He's been on the podcast a couple times. He's got this rant that most adults in the corporate environment are really just babies in disguise. They look like adults, they act like adults, but they're really babies. For example, they want to always be the center of attention. They don't want to share stuff they've accumulated. They want to keep their resources, their budget, their people. They get irrationally upset about things not going their way. Even when it's just like a terrible idea, they're just like, nah, that was my idea. I wanted to get this thing to happen. There's also just like power struggles and no, I want this to happen because it's what I want. And they often just need people to fix things for them. For example, today my toddler, he just like grabbed this Yoto player that we have and he's like threw it across the room. He's like, pick it up. So with that, I think understanding how babies think and toddlers think and operate is helpful in the corporate environment where we think we're working adults, but a lot of times they're more like babies. How does that resonate?
I guess my most generous interpretation of what you just said is slightly different but similar, which is that all humans need the same things. Whether we're 1 or 5 or 45 or 85, we tend to need the same things. When the needs are not being met, we all tend to express ourselves in kind of ineffective, less than ideal ways. And so maybe that's my interpretation of agreeing with what you're saying.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get into the first topic lesson. Let's talk about the power of repair. One of your more important and impactful lessons that you teach parents. Explain the toddler kids version of this and how this is useful in raising kids, and then just how this might translate into a corporate environment.
Yeah. I think repair is kind of the number one relationship strategy we have. And the thing that keeps us from repairing, which really is the idea of going back to a person after a moment we didn't feel proud of, taking responsibility for our part, maybe acknowledging the impact it had on them and talking about what you would do differently the next time, is actually this very false idea that there's a goal to be perfect, right? In our family, we say something, we actually now say it at work, perfect is creepy. I just think it encapsulates, like, you don't even want to be perfect. It's actually very creepy. Only non-humans, can ever be perfect. And what defines kind of the human condition is that we want to do well and we mess up over and over again. And one of the things I remember learning in clinical psych grad school was that the thing that really differentiated secure attachment, which is the nature of a relationship you really want to have with your kid, is the presence of repair. And I remember the professor continuing to talk, and I was kind of stopped in my tracks thinking, what? Oh, so secure attachment isn't defined by getting it right all the time. Secure attachment is just defined by we're all going to mess up, but secure attachment has an adult who's willing to repair. That felt very hopeful to me because it felt like something I could realistically get good at. And over, whether it's with your kid, when you say to them, hey, sorry I yelled, some version of I had a stressful day at work. That wasn't your fault. And I'm working on staying calmer even when I'm upset. Or we say to someone, I don't know, on our team, hey, earlier in the meeting, I totally cut you off. I used a really harsh tone. Honestly, I did disagree with what you're saying, but that's no excuse for me to talk to you the way I did. Stuff was going on before the meeting. I'm sorry, I'm going to work on that. There's just nothing to reestablish trust and connection like repair. And when trust and connection are reestablished, then whether it's your kid or someone at work, they cooperate better. You don't get into conversations that are kind of run-on conversations that are really an act of defensiveness, and you can just get a lot more done.
There's a kind of an associated concept you talk about, which is around connecting before correcting, which reminds me of radical candor a little bit, of just this idea of challenge directly but care deeply. Talk a bit about this concept of connecting before correcting.
Yeah, well, I'll use kind of, let's take it out of parenting and work, because I think it really shows the importance of connecting in all of our lives. So all of us say about our kids, my kid doesn't listen. My kid doesn't listen to me, right? But if you picture me on the couch, and let's say I have 3 kids, they're all sleeping now, and I'm finally settling in for now, like the 2 minutes I have before I pass out, because I'm tired. And let's say my husband comes out and just says, Becky, we have to do our taxes. And you're watching the scene and you see me say, whoa, like I just sat down to read a book. And he goes, you don't you don't listen to me. You have a listening problem. And if you don't do the taxes with me right now, I'm taking away your dessert for a week. Okay. Lenny, I'm pretty sure no one would tell me I have a listening problem. They'd probably say I have a husband problem if that happened, right? They'd be like, wow. But we do that to our kids and we do that at work all the time. Now, let's say the same situation happened and he said, whoa, I realized I didn't tell you this. We have to get our taxes done tonight. You look like you're just settling in to that book. Oh, can we get on top of this together? I know we're on the same team. Can we figure this out? The chances that I will do taxes just skyrocketed, right? Why? Because he sees me in my reality as a full human being, not just as an object in his world to get something done. He kind of joins my world where I'm embedded in my own priorities. And by doing that forms a bridge. That's what connection is. So I can kind of walk back over to his world with him to do something that's a priority in his world. So connection, it first of all just feels good anyway, but it's not such a kind of soft topic. Connection is what forms a bridge between two people so they can act together in the same interest. And so whether you're thinking about your kid not listening or you're thinking about things at work, coming back to connection is really the foundation for both cooperation and at work, even productivity.
I love the way you phrased it at the beginning, that like the way you just said it. I'm like, oh, wow, I get why someone would start to listen. To help people actually do this in day to day, what are just like, what's the way to approach that, the way you phrase like beginning that connection conversation?
The truth is the first step is a mindset. And I know that sounds annoying because it's like, just tell me what to do. And anyone who knows me knows I love telling people script ideas, but we feel people's intention, not just their intervention. So the same intervention will be felt completely different based on our mindset. So if I'm going into a conversation with you, Lenny, and let's say, I don't know, I want you to do something for me. I'd like you to come water my non-existent plants, okay? And I'm like, I'm going to connect to Lenny first. First, I'm going to say, oh, how's it going? Tell me this thing about your life. And you just know that is in and of itself a transaction to get you to do the thing I want you to do. Not only is it not going to quote work, it's going to feel like dirty to you. You're going to feel it and it's going to feel off. So the mindset we need to be in, which is so hard, and I talk a good game, but it's hard for me too, okay, is trying to get into a kind of without an agenda mindset, even if it's for 30 seconds with someone. Being present with someone without an agenda is increasingly hard to do, but that is what connection is about. No one wants something of me. They just kind of see me, or they're recognizing something I'm doing, or they kind of plop down on the couch next to me. And so what could that look like with your kid? It's often very, very simple things, okay? And it's going to feel really small, especially anyone who works a lot, where we get so addicted to accomplishing and dopamine. It's sitting next to your kid and putting your hand on their back, literally, for longer than feels natural. It's saying to your kid, I'm happy to see you. And that's it. Such a nice thing to say when your kid comes home from school or you come home from work or first thing in the morning. It's watching your kid play and describing what they're doing instead of peppering them with questions. Oh, you're making a tall tower versus, oh my goodness, is that a fire station? Oh my goodness, we can make the best fire station in the world. And I hear myself say that because I can say that, but it's not connection actually. At work, it's probably saying, hey, tell me a little about your long weekend, and not kind of counting down the seconds for them to finish so you can tell them what to start on this week, but kind of giving yourself permission to say, can I actually just kind of drop down into that moment, right? And so I think it's the mindset, and then it's actually something that doesn't have an agenda, that's just about seeing someone, noticing someone in a really, really small way.
I love this idea of just the mindset. That's like such a powerful reframe of this, is like, don't think about what are the correct words to say. It's just like, actually just feel, okay, I just want to connect with you first for 30 seconds.
Yeah. And I want to reveal something about myself, right? So one of the things I think about is that efficiency and relationship building are often in opposition. We're doing one or the other. And one of the things I've learned the very, very hard way about myself, especially since I've been working the last couple of years, is my efficiency is kind of reinforced at work, right? And a lot of us who can be very efficient and get things done, we can have a little morality about it. Like we listen to someone's story, we're like, come on, get to the point. When that person in our life is like, the whole point is that I want to tell you the whole story, you know? And I think if anyone's listening thinking, yeah, like I'm kind of an efficiency oriented person, dropping into relationship mode takes real intention. And it's hard, especially if a big part of your life, the efficiency is reinforced. So if it feels awkward and slow, and I always call it with my kids, my best time just feels low stim. It just feels so low stim. I'm like, is this right? Am I doing this right? That's probably a sign I am, because not much is happening and I'm not being efficient with my time. I'm just in kind of relationship building mode.
What I think about as you're talking about this is the best people I've worked with that are most effective at work are the people that are really good at this, that you feel like really listen, really care, and just like aren't rushed. And so I could totally see the power here.
Yeah.
So one of the core principles you teach, the name of your book and the name of your product and community and everything you built is good inside. I'm curious if that's a useful lens in the work environment too. You know, you teach like kids are good inside, no matter what no matter their behavior, they may be having a hard time, but they're still good inside. Is that useful in work at all? Are people always still good inside? I imagine not always.
I think it's a very useful framework, and I'll say why, but I want to separate things that we often confuse. No part of me, if my kid is, when they were younger, hitting, would I be like, my kid is good inside, so who cares that they hit? Or this employee's good inside, so it doesn't matter that they're not getting their PRDs in on time, whatever it is. No. And I think that's actually the other thing that's core to good inside is the idea of being good inside inherently requires us to separate behavior and identity. Most difficult times we have personally or interpersonally come because we've collapsed behavior and identity. And it's easy to do because we infer a lot from people's behavior for our own, right? So someone's late to work a lot. Oh, that person's lazy, right? Seeing that person as good inside starts with this sentence: this is a good person who is late, right? Or I have a good kid who's hitting. And I do this thing with my hands because it actually helps my brain and body see the difference. One hand is identity, the other hand is behavior. And literally just separating them forces you to distinguish who someone is good inside from their behavior. And ironically, that's what allows you to effectively change and improve their behavior. Because we all know what it's like to feel defensive. Do you know why we're defensive? Because we think someone else, instead of talking about our behavior, is talking about our identity. And then we can't even talk about our behavior anymore and being late because we feel like they're accusing us of being a bad person or being lazy or not caring about the other people in the meeting. Now we can't even talk about the reason for my lateness because my whole identity feels wrapped up in it. So the quickest way to have an unproductive conversation is to lose sight of the fact that someone's good inside. If I'm talking about someone at work, let's say again, who's always late, here's like a quote, good inside infused conversation. I would start by saying, first of all, I want to say we're on the same team. If that's the only thing people take from this, that is the most amazing way to have a more productive conversation with anyone. I want to say we're on the same team. I know you're a good person. You probably don't need me to tell you that we need to start meetings on time. We both know that. It's also been happening consistently, which lets me know something is going on that I want to get to the bottom of with you, because we need you to be there at 9 a.m. to start this important leadership meeting. So tell me what's been going on. Is there something at work that feels bad that makes you not want to come in? Is there something going on at home? Is this, I don't know, hard time managing your time? Whatever it is, let's get to the bottom of it together so we can figure it out. So that to me is that lens. And it's honestly, Lenny, it's the same thing we do, I don't know, in like a good sports coach. I don't know someone, I don't know, who's a good even professional sports coach who's like, you missed all the layups today. What's wrong with you? And here's what I'm taking away. It's like, whoa, you're a good player. Something's going on. Let's get in the gym tomorrow. Let's figure it out. I believe in you. I am putting you on the bench now because it's not really working out, but we're going to get to the bottom of this together. That comes from seeing the good inside someone.
Just hearing you say these things is always like, I could see exactly why this works. So a takeaway here is just kind of start with admitting to them and showing them, they are smart. They know what is the right thing to do. They just maybe aren't doing it.
Yeah. And because now we can take that off the table. And if someone's thinking, but I don't think that of the person, then it's actually just a very different conversation, but we put that in a different category. But if you start talking about someone's behavior right away and they think, which we all tend to think, you're actually saying I'm not a smart person. you're not even talking about the behavior anymore. Now their language seems like it's talking about the behavior, but all you're doing is you're having a debate you don't even realize you're having, which is whether they're a good, moral, worthy person. That's not an effective work conversation.
So just kind of laying out that, they are good, they are smart, they know the right thing to do, but here's something that isn't going the way that it should.
Yeah.
This connects to something else that you teach, which is the MGI, the most generous interpretation. Talk about that and how that might relate to work.
Yeah, I've realized I have an allergy to ideas that don't have action. I've realized this actually at work and just with psychology too. So this whole idea, people are good inside. How can you separate behavior from identity as a framework to then go into a conversation? All of it just feels too theoretical for me. And so I like to think, like, what is one tool I can use to action on that idea? And it started, I think, through parenting. I'd finished day with my kids. I was going to bed when my kids are younger. I was like, wow, that day was just a disaster. And then I would hear myself start talking about my kid in a way where I always loved my kid, but I didn't realize till later, even through the language, I stopped liking my kid. I was just listening to your Peter Deng episode, which was a lot about language, right? And how language then impacts thoughts. And I think a lot as a parent, but it's true as a leader, the story you tell yourself as a kid at night kind of becomes the parent you are the next morning. Probably same true. The story you tell yourself about your organization at night becomes the leader you are the next morning. And I realized I was using what I later called this least generous interpretation. I think we all do that naturally, at least I do. Like I see my kid not listening and laughing if I'm trying to discipline. And my first thought is like, I think my kid's a sociopath. Like, I don't know how I get there. My kid's 2 years old, but it happens so fast. Okay. And I realized at night, the only way to shift this and get into a good inside mindset was just to say to myself, what's the most generous interpretation of why I would say to my kid some version of stop jumping on the couch, it's dangerous, you're near the glass table, and he'd look at me and jump doubly hard on the couch. My least generous interpretation was that as a sociopath. I already covered that one. My most generous interpretation, there's not one right answer, it might be, this is a kid who's really oriented around kind of wanting to feel in control. And when that feels threatened, he doubles down. He is 0% people pleasing, this third child of mine. My other, 0. So the whole I'm disappointed with you is just not going to work with a kid like that. And when I started using an MGI, a couple of things happened. I realized like I liked my kid again. And I think we don't talk about that enough as parents, that's the thing that keeps us up at night. It's not their behavior. It's that we slowly stop liking them based on how we're describing them. And then I realized we were on the same team. And then I came up with a whole different range of interventions because I used a most generous interpretation, right? I think the same thing is true at work, right? Someone, I don't know, is belaboring their point in a meeting when everyone else has gone on. And maybe the least generous interpretation, maybe it is what I was reacting to in your initial question is, oh, they're being a baby or everyone just is like vain. My most generous interpretation, I don't know, could be a variety of things. Did they not feel heard the first time? Still doesn't make them going on forever, acceptable. But if that's true, I might say to them in private, hey, something happens in meetings where I wonder if you don't always feel heard. And then you keep talking. And then honestly, the rest of the room gets annoyed, which makes us tune you out more, which probably makes you belabor your point more. We're in a bad cycle. Can we work together on changing this? And now all of a sudden, instead of everyone complaining about that person or whatever it is and nothing changing, which is just horrible for culture and productivity, we have one conversation through an MGI lens and things start, moving forward in a more productive way.
It's interesting how much of this comes back to just kind of assuming they are smart and are trying to do their best job and are good inside and translating to, okay, here's like, in spite of that, here's something that is still going wrong. Let's try to figure out. There's kind of this idea of curiosity over judgment, trying to figure out what's missing.
And that's exactly it. Those are two things also that I think are in opposition, right? You inherently cannot be judgmental when you're curious. And when you're judgmental about something, you're inherently not curious about it. And I think it's assuming, I say assume good inside or assume, MGI. Other people say assume positive intent. Whatever language hits your heart, I think is the language everyone's different. MGI makes sense for me, but if there's someone else that has a different phrase, someone should use that one. And then I think also assuming we this person would want to work through this with me. And I think, Lenny, that's one of the things that we also miss a ton in our kids. The kids who hit, no matter what they say, they really don't like feeling out of control. A kid who's lying to your face, they don't want to lie to your face. Like, they don't want to behave this way either. Again, which doesn't make the behavior okay, but it makes us soften a tiny bit and realize we're on the same team. And I think actually we all want the same outcome.
Wait, say more about that, because that doesn't feel, as a parent, that my kid doesn't want to, when he's like throwing a thing across the way or just like resisting going in the car. I want to hear more about what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll start with the baseline, right? That as a clinical psychologist, I was initially trained in this very reward, punishment, timeout, sticker chart mode. And to be honest, I loved it because I have a very healthy left brain, and our left brains love logic and we love linearity. And as soon as you're a parent, you're like, there's no linearity or logic really, but our brain wants that to be a system. And it's kind of a system of punish the bad and you have less of the bad, and reward the good. And no one really says, well, how are we raising a human? Those are just behaviors, but our brain loves it. And that's what I started teaching to parents. I did in my private practice because it felt clean. But it was at complete odds with everything I knew was helping all the adults in my practice change their lives. And that's actually what gave me insight into starting Good Inside. It's like, there's no way that what helps a 35-year-old rewire their brain and change for the better is that theoretical opposition with what a 2-year-old and 5-year-old needs to become resilient and confident. That just doesn't make sense. And I think we have these ideas about kids. Even, something I hear a lot, you're making a bad choice to kids. You're a good person, you're making a bad choice. This is not about forgiving bad behavior. I'm pretty firm about that. But I just don't believe a 4-year-old who's throwing is like, hold on. Should I throw this at my sister? Should I or should I not? I will choose think about us when we act out. I don't think most of us are in a decision-making place. We escalate. And here's one of the big insights, besides people are good inside that help me form all of my other approaches, is kids are born with all the feelings and none of the skills to manage feelings. Bad behavior at any age can basically be reduced to feelings that overpower skills. And yes, behavior is a problem, but behavior isn't the core problem. It's a manifestation of the problem. The actual problem is someone doesn't have the skill they need to manage something happening internally. And if they had that skill and could access it, the behavior would change. But that would be kind of the outcome, not the place of actual intervention. And so when a kid hits, and kids will say things like, I don't care what you say. They're out of control. Maybe they're in a situation where, they could be tired, but also they're angry that a sibling has a toy and they don't have skills to manage anger. They're jealous that someone is playing with something and they can't manage the jealousy. And when you look at bad behavior through the lens of feelings that overpower skills, you start to think like a coach. Like, it always has struck me with kids that we don't punish them into learning how to swim, which I know sounds funny. But if you paid for swim lessons and the person said, you know what, I'm just not going to put up with this. It's just inappropriate behavior. By the way, your kid has to learn to swim if they're going to function in life. So send them to their room and tell them to come back when they learn how to swim. It's absurd. It's obviously laughable. I think swimming is very important, but an even more important life skill is learning how to manage your emotions. It is. And nobody learns new skills by being sent to their room. Nobody learns new skills by adding shame. All that does is increase the gap between feelings and skills. It's just totally counterproductive. The answer is we have to set boundaries. We have to be the people setting boundaries around out of control behavior. But then we actually have to teach our kids the skills they were missing, which levels up the skills. And that's how not only you change behavior short term, but you actually change behavior massively long term.
I'm actually in the middle of starting potty training with our kid, and I'm taking this little online course, and they call it potty learning, not potty training, for exactly that reason. You're not training them to do a thing. They don't know how to do it. So you just teach them, like you're teaching them the alphabet. Just teach them all the little steps and what they need to learn.
You're not doing our potty learning course? Lenny, I'm going to talk to you after.
Oh, I didn't know you had one. Okay.
Our marketing message isn't getting out there.
Switching immediately. Well, how do people find it? Goodinside.com.
It's actually one of the things I feel very strongly about putting out for free, because I think potty stuff is like one of the early lessons around body autonomy and skills. And the quickest way we kind of mess it up as parents is kind of trying to take over the process. And it can be so stressful. And I actually told my team a while ago, I just think this should be a service. Like, so if you Google good inside potty, like you can have it for $0.
Oh, it's actually free already.
Yes, it's free.
I'm switching immediately.
Yes.
Is there a corollary to adult work environments in potty learning?
Yeah, there is. There
do
always
tell.
is. Well, okay, so let's think about what the potty stuff is about for kids. When our kids are younger, they control two things in their entire life: what goes into their body and what comes out of their body. That's all. No, obviously, hopefully we let them pick their clothes here and there, but like thematically, by the way, and they shouldn't be in charge of a ton more categories because they're two, right? But it's why those two areas can become so heated for families, because we get so stressed. And when kids, especially if you don't have a people pleaser, okay, when kids even smell, my parent is stepping into one of the only two domains that are mine. Holy moly, will they do nutty things like to push you back, right? And so what's the general lesson, the human lesson is, what is it like for someone to have not that many areas of life that they're in control of? Number one, just think about that. Think about the first 10 minutes of your kid's day. We wake them up. We tell them what the weather is. We tell them, no, you can't wear that. We tell them what's for breakfast. We, tell them their shirt's on the wrong way. It just, if my husband woke me up that way, I would be in a bad mood the rest of the day, okay? And I'd probably be looking for a million different areas to just grasp control of as a way of screaming to the world, like, I am my own person, right? And so if we think about that in the workplace, well, first of all, temperamentally, there are a subset of people. I call these the resilient rebels. They present as like strong-willed, defiant kids whose, I think we all walk around with a core fear that we end up acting out. Their core fear is the loss of control. They are very, very attuned to people kind of stepping into their domain. And if they smell it, they resist. Well, we have those as adults too. It's tricky to collaborate with them. And again, we need to have an expectation. But we might see that as, why do I ask someone to switch a meeting time? And it feels like I took a knife to their heart the way they react, right? Well, that theme might be coming up, and maybe we can go one level deeper and say, is this someone who in general, I'm making this up, but someone got promoted before they did on their team. They just had a change in manager. They just had their vacation denied, whatever it was. Is that actually what we're talking about? And it's manifesting as this difficulty changing meaning time, but actually there's other themes of control and independence at play.
Is maybe a lesson here is clarifying, here's what you own on this team, on this project, here's things that you're going to drive, here's where I'm going to be really involved. Is that maybe a takeaway?
I think that is definitely a takeaway. I also just love like naming your intention. That's always really helpful. Hey, I want to look over this project together because I want to get ahead of some things. And I think that's actually going to help you do the most independent work. That's why I want to go through it in such detail. Like when you name the intention very, very clearly for someone, they're much more likely to interpret your behavior through the intention you just named, because your intention isn't to control them or make them feel small. But if that's also something they have a predilection for, it's even more important for those people to do the naming of the intention up front.
And there's also just a whole micromanaging, element to this. So this is why people in part hate micromanagement. Like, I want to be in control of something. Why get out of this?
Yeah, which is a dance, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Something else that you teach that I find really helpful is this idea of sturdy, becoming a sturdy parent, learning to be sturdy. That feels very related to being a good leader, just like learning how to deal with challenges. Talk about that from the kids' context, and then how it might be useful in work.
Yeah, I think that's the essence of what Good Inside does. Like, we help parents become sturdy leaders so they can raise sturdy, confident kids. And when I started this, I'd use that word a lot. People would say to me, I've never heard anyone use that word. I know what it means, but I think about language too. And I like language that helps me conjure up an image or a feeling. It takes it out of my brain and I think the word sturdy, if you picture someone in your life, even if you haven't thought about them, like who's a sturdy person I know? Like I bet you can kind of locate them, you see them, and there's a feeling you have around them. And I think the best leaders we have are sturdy. And so I'll start it with a metaphor, because I actually think that brings it to life. And I think this is as true in parenting and in, the workplace. So picture being a passenger on a flight. It's really turbulent. And you start screaming and everyone starts screaming. Okay. So everyone's panicked in the flight. And then you hear the announcement from the pilot. And I think there's 3 types of announcements you can have. The third one is going to be the sturdy one. The first 2, not as much. So the first one is some version of, what are you freaking out about? Stop screaming. You're making this flight awful for everyone and you're distracting me, and stop making a big deal out of nothing. And that's kind of when we say those words to a kid. Stop freaking out. You're ruining this for everyone. Right? But the truth is, if you think about yourself on a flight and the pilot says that, you don't feel calmer. Number 1, you're worried they don't notice the turbulence. Number 2, you're a little disturbed that it just takes your screaming to make the pilot kind of lose it at you, right? And that actually makes you feel less safe, right? And so that's like in a meeting where people, I don't know, voice something that doesn't feel good, and the leader essentially is like, stop complaining, that's not sturdy. The second version is often also not sturdy, and I think we've a little bit, at least in parenting, overcorrected to this, which is a pilot saying, I hear you screaming. You know what? I'm opening the cockpit door. Does anyone want to fly the plane? Because your screaming is making me anxious, and I'm not really sure what to do. Maybe one of you want to do it. I think that's a massive overcorrection I've seen in parenting, and I just want to make it very clear that is not what we do at Good Inside, which is kind of, my kid is upset, and instead of just caring about their feelings, now their feelings dictate my decisions. That's terrifying for someone on a flight. If that's me, I'm not even scared of the turbulence anymore. I'm scared that this person is my supposed leader, right? That's also in a meeting when you complain about things and, a leader might say, oh, okay, you know what? Okay, we'll just get consensus on this. When it's a decision, that's a leadership decision, not a consensus decision, which some decisions are, but some decisions aren't, because you are the only one who has certain information. Now, to me, is the third announcement that I want to hear when it's really turbulent is something like this. I hear everyone screaming back there. That makes sense. And you haven't been on as many flights. You're right. It's very bumpy. And I know what I'm doing. This turbulence, though it scares you, it doesn't scare me. I'm actually going to get off this loudspeaker right now to go back to do my job. I'll see you when we land in Los Angeles. Now, even if the turbulence is the same, all of a sudden I feel this deep breath because my worry is contained. This sturdy leader is able to see my emotional experience as real for me and not be overwhelmed by it themselves. Those are the 2 distinct aspects of being a sturdy leader. I can see someone else's experience as real for them, but I can still hold on to my experience. And so I'm not overwhelmed by someone else. So to a kid, it might be saying, look, let's say TV time is over. Okay. And my kid does not reward in my house. When I say TV time is over, I'm turning off the TV. When my kids were younger, they didn't say, you're right, Mom, that's a great decision. No. Okay. They freaked out because they wanted to watch another one. So a sturdy leader would say in that position, I'm turning the TV off. That's my decision. I get that you're upset. I don't really like to end TV time either. I also know we'll get through it. Do your thing. And then we'll transition to brushing teeth. And then I kind of wait it out. Right? Or in the workplace, someone's complaining about, I don't know, making this up, but maybe it's some policy change, vacation change, number of days, in the office, where you say, look, I'm going to make it, I want to share something that I know some people are going to have a reaction to. Here's the new policy. People stop chirping, complaining. Look, I get it. This is a big change. And you're right. This does make things hard in a certain way. And I totally see that. And the way you're feeling makes sense. And here's some version of why we're doing it. And I know we're going to get through it. And I have faith in us to weather this turbulence, right? And I think in every situation, kids, workplace, in-laws, whatever it is, that sturdy leadership that, always feels good.
This is a really good segue to something I definitely wanted to ask you about, which is this idea of boundaries, of how to set boundaries well, and how that relates to long-term resilience versus just kind of this idea of short-term happiness. I was just yesterday watching your advice on how to set boundaries with my kid because I struggle with it sometimes, and I'm just like, what am I doing wrong? And it was extremely helpful. I started using your advice, and I'm like, wow, he's doing exactly what I wanted to do. So there's a lot of power here. So talk about just from your advice to parents around boundaries and this idea of long-term resilience, and then how that might translate.
Yeah. And so I think related to being a sturdy leader, to make it more concrete, there's 2 jobs we have as a parent. I think they're the same 2 jobs we have as any sturdy leader in any environment. And that's setting boundaries, which are limits we set, certain decisions we make. Boundaries often relate to your position of authority, where you have some long-term goal in mind that someone else in the system just isn't as aware of, or a 2-year-old isn't as capable of holding on to, which is why you're in the position of making a decision. So that's the boundaries. And the other side is validating kids or someone else's experience while not being taken over by it. And I think we've moved so far in this direction of validating kids' experience, and I'll go on record and saying validating kids' feelings is an incomplete parenting approach. That is half of our job, but it doesn't work if we're not doing the other half, which is setting boundaries, which is the skill I feel best about teaching people, because I think it's what we're often lacking. So my definition of boundaries, I do like, because it's immediately usable and testable. Boundaries are what you tell someone else you will do, and it requires the other person to do nothing. Too often I hear people say, my kid doesn't respect my boundaries. My colleague doesn't respect my boundaries. And with all due respect, I often think, I think you have an incorrect definition of boundaries. I think you're probably making a request, which, by the way, we do a lot. There's nothing wrong with requests, but it's not a boundary. Because if you're setting what you call a boundary and you're really making a request, you're giving all of your power away to the other person, because you're saying the success of this important moment depends on my 2-year-old. What? I'm not gonna give my power to my 2-year-old. And I always tell parents, I would bet on you any day over your kid. And it's not because I don't like your kid. I do like your kid. I just believe in you more. And so a good example of this, let's say, is I have a kid, like I was describing before, who's not a people pleaser. And so I live in New York City. We live in a building with a lot of elevator buttons, where this kid, when he was younger, if he was left to his own devices, which had happened, he would press every elevator button. Everyone, okay? And with my other kids, one of them especially, I probably would have been able to make a request like, hey, when we go in the elevator later, it's really important not to press all the buttons. Other people wait for this elevator, it's rude, whatever it is. That's not a boundary, because I could say, did I tell my kid what I will do? No. Does it require my kid to do nothing? No. Okay. A boundary would be saying, when we go into the elevator, I'm going to stand between you and the buttons, sweetie, because I'm not going to let you press the buttons because other people are waiting. And if you have a kid like my kid, they're going to lunge for it anyway. And then I would block my kid because I'm ready and I've done a workout. My muscles are ready. I'm not going to let you do that. Now my kid might get upset, which allows me to do the other part of my jobs. Oh, I know you wish you could press those buttons, or maybe just look kindly toward him and not say anything. But I'm going to still hold my boundary. And in this example, I think one of the places we get into trouble as a parent is we say, don't press the buttons. If you press the buttons, no dessert tonight, or whatever we like threaten. But all of that is a way of completely undermining our authority, because I'm giving all of my power to my kid. I'm letting myself get frustrated. Now I'm taking away dessert, and the honest truth, if we want to be honest about it, is at night I'm going to give my kids sorbet anyway, and then make up something how sorbet isn't dessert because it has fruit, all because I just didn't set a boundary in the first place. And I think over and over in parenting, maybe at work too, we're asking our kid to do our job for us because we just don't want to deal with the emotional fallout. But that's what I call job confusion, and makes everyone frustrated.
Your marketing website sets the tone for your brand and is the one touch point that every single one of your customers sees. In today's age, if you're still having a hard time making small changes and simple updates to it, you're doing something wrong. That is why so many companies, from early stage startups to Fortune 500s, including companies like SpaceX, DoorDash, Zapier, Perplexity, and 11 Labs, turn to Framer, the website builder that turns your .com from a formality into a tool for growth. Framer works like your team's favorite design tool and comes with real-time collaboration, a robust CMS with everything you need for great SEO, and advanced analytics that includes integrated A/B testing. Changes to your Framer site go live to the web in seconds with a single click and without any help from engineering. Whether you want to launch a new site, test a few landing pages, or migrate your full .com, Framer has programs for startups, scale-ups, and large enterprises to make going from idea to live site as easy and fast as possible. Learn how to turn your website into a growth engine from a Framer expert, or just get started building for free today at framer.com/Lenny. And if you're a Lenny's Product Pass subscriber, you get an entire year of Framer Pro for free. Check it out at framer.com/Lenny. Rules and restrictions may apply. Let me actually ask you a parenting question while we're on this topic, as I'm trying to learn this boundaries thing better. So what's the correct way to, if they're not going to the car and I'm like, okay, I'm going to carry you to the car if you don't do this, I'm still requesting them to go there. Is there a way to phrase that where they don't need to do anything?
Well, so if boundaries are something I will do and they require my kid to do nothing, yeah, we want to try. Look, we have to get in the car and whatever I try a game, I try a song. And then again, the intention matters. The reason I'm going to carry my kid to the car is actually, I don't want to let myself then be late and then yell at my kid and be frustrated, right? Like, I'm doing it because I like my kid and I'm on the same team as them. So then I might say, look, it looks like it's hard for you to get to the car. I don't really want to do this, but I don't know. I'm going to turn around. I'm going to take a deep breath. And if by the time I turn around, you're still here, I'm going to pick you up. I'm going to carry you to the car. And even if you're crying and kicking and screaming, I'm still going to do that, sweetie. I know sometimes it's hard to leave the house. We do have to leave. Here comes my deep breath. Now, what's really important, I don't want to understate, is I think somewhere in us, we think, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to be rewarded by my kid for my good parenting. Like, I'm going to turn around and they're going to be like, I'm ready now, Dad. Like, that might happen in some households, but it actually won't reliably happen until you've actually set boundaries over and over, where it's not about taking advantage of you. They're just trying to learn the rules of the game, right? And so then I would pick up my kid. And by the way, depending on your kid's temperament, 2 out of the 3 of my kids would scream and cry. And then we tell ourselves, oh, I'm not a good parent, I messed that up. No. Again, like, a pilot is going to make a decision in certain key moments, not based on consensus. Like, let's say I'm flying to LA and it's really turbulent and the pilot says they have to make an emergency landing and everyone's complaining. And they're like, what? Can't be that big of a deal. I don't know if that's a light. I have a big meeting in LA. Can you imagine if the pilot was like, oh, Becky and Lenny are really upset about this. You know what, guys? Forget it. Forget it. Forget the emergency landing. What? Even if we were upset, we feel deeply, deeply safe that our leader is doing something they believe is right with the information they have available. So even if I'm complaining when I get off the plane in Kansas, wherever I'm landing midway, I also, in the back of my head, I'm so grateful. And so I just want parents to know, when you set a true boundary, especially if it's new, your kid will tantrum and protest. But if you actually see that as a sign that you're successfully setting a boundary, instead of as a sign you did something wrong, your relationship with the tantrum changes. You're almost oddly, sickly grateful for a sign that you set a boundary. You're like, oh, this is actually, I always say to myself, this is going according to plan. And it makes the moment so much easier.
This advice you give about being the leader is really important. And I could see how it connects deeply to in the work environment. I'm curious just if there's more advice there. So the idea that I've been hearing is just like, people want you to be their leader, both as a kid and in the work environment. They don't want you to be like, okay, what does everyone think? Let's vote. Talk about just the insight there.
Yeah, first of all, I think, like a lot of things, 2 things are true. There's definitely a time for consensus. There's a time for getting 100%. That's a really important part of leadership too. But inherently, you're in a position of leadership because you have experience other people don't have, you have insight, you have judgment. You might, like, just very literally have access to company information and data that other people don't have, that, right? And so you're not all working, from the same set of information. And so there's definitely a time for consensus building, but at least in parenting, I think we've overcorrected. I need to collect more data from the working world if we've overcorrected, that I think it feels really good for people to hear some version of, I took in everything you said, your voices matter, and I want to share a decision I've made with all the information I have. It might not make sense to all of you at the time. You can come talk to me separately. And I have conviction that this is the next thing we're going to experiment with, whatever the decision is. I said this word earlier, and it's always a word it's another word I say that maybe other people don't say. I'm always drawn to people I can locate. And that's the word. I just, again, I can locate you. I know what you feel. I know your POV. I personally love people I can locate, even if I really disagree with them, more than being around people who seem to mirror what I'm saying. I've actually learned a lot in a working environment. That's what I need, because I have a lot of strong ideas. So I love people who push back and have a POV. And I think especially at work, when there's so much going on, right? It can be so stressful. Having a leader you can locate, which means I have a POV, to be able to say, this might not be what you want. I believe this is the best decision, and I believe we're a strong enough team to work toward that. I think that's very, very holding, not all the time, but in more situations than we might realize.
So the advice here is, even if it may not feel like your kid wants you to just tell them what to do, or your team it wants to have opinions and kind of have a big say, in reality, the human brain seeks somebody to lead them.
I think that's exactly right, and I think we can all think back on our life. And again, you rarely say thank you to these people. But if you think back on like really hard moments, or I don't know, if I was out of control at some like party, and I don't know, I was like being mean to people, I was like saying awful things, who knows, maybe someone's like drunk. An act of love in that moment would be, at least if it was me, my husband picking me up and carrying me out. Kind of like, I'm not going to let you self-destruct. And if I was like, no, I'm fine, I might even look back later and think like, why did you let me make that decision? I'll share a story because some of this comes from it. I think about this teenager I was working with in private practice, and she came to me. I'm just doing a first session. Okay, tell me what to bring you here. She's like, well, you can see on my arms, I'm cutting. I was like, okay, keep going. And I was like, well, how long have you been doing that? She was 2 years. And I said, you just said I'm the first therapist you've ever seen. So what's gone on in the last 2 years? She was so snarky. And she goes, oh, wow. My parents tried to send me to a therapist 2 years ago, but I said to them, oh, so you think I'm the messed up one in the family, and you can send me and we're just going to lie the whole time and waste your money. My heart always races when I think about this moment. It's so visceral still. And something in me, I don't know, I was on my game that day, was like, Becky, just be quiet. Don't say anything. And I don't know, 10, 15 seconds later, everything changed for her. She looked down and then she looked up and she just goes, can you believe they let me make that decision? She felt so betrayed and so not taken care of. And it just made me realize, at our worst moments, first of all, at our worst moments, we speak, I think, our fears, not our wishes, number one. And at our worst moments, we're not a good place to make good decisions for ourselves. And we don't want to be punished. But sometimes it is an act of love. And I tell this to people very explicitly when they're like, I know my teenager needs to go to therapy, but they're refusing. And I'll give them an exact script. Here's what you're going to say. And, it's some version of, look, I am going to drive you every Thursday to therapy. Whatever you do in the room, whether you lie, whether you're silent, that's not on me. But my number one job is making decisions that I think are good for you, even if you're not happy. That's how much I care about you. And this is one of those times. Like, every parent who told me they'd done that, it's like their kid's like, on some level, they're like, I needed that. And I think the equivalent in the workplace is, there are moments when things are really turbulent, when people are, they're saying different things because they're anxious and they're looking for a leader to kind of say, hey, I've heard this all. Here's what I'm doing. You might even say, I'm not going to lie to you. Do I have complete conviction that this is right? No, but I've put it all together and this is what we're going with. And I feel good about this direction. We'll reassess in a month. Let's go do this, team. And I think everyone is kind of waiting in certain moments, for someone to show up that way.
That was an awesome story. It makes me think about just people will get away. They will take what they can get, and they'll be wondering like, hey, wow, I'm getting away with all this. Now, when will they realize that, like someone working at a company where they're not working that hard, I'll just get away with this as long as I can until they tell me that I can't.
Yeah. And, I just saw the show on Broadway called Punch. I don't know if you're, it's this really interesting story about this guy, true story, okay, that is based on, where essentially he ended up punching someone at a bar. The guy falls and dies. But he ends up getting to know that person's parents after incarceration. And one of the things that comes up, okay, because I think we tell ourselves like people will take advantage. They'll take all the space you give them. I do tend to think about it in a more of an MGI way, Or what happened in this show is these parents, I mean, this guy killed their son. And the question they come to him with, because they end up meeting, is, well, like, tell us what you're going to do with your life here. What are you going to do with your life now? And he ends up saying, like, nobody had ever asked me that question. Like, nobody had believed in me. Nobody had ever believed I could do anything useful, change the course of his life. I mean, it's a crazy story. But I think about at work when someone, like whatever it is we think they're getting away with, or kids, sometimes I think kids are asking, like, is there an adult here? Is there an adult here who will help me, who sees that this is my form of acting out and being out of control? And will somebody help me? And you know why kids act out more? It's not because they're taking advantage of you. It's because they feel that much more dysregulated because they don't feel like there's an adult in the room who's willing to put a container on their like shell-less egg to help them come back together and move forward in a better direction.
I think about just people that don't have parents that are there and always seek like someone in as their partner that's more, I don't know, that gives them that later. This connects really well with this idea of building resilience long-term versus short-term. And I think about in the work environment, just like doing the hard thing, you will be better off versus just like letting things progress because it's hard for them to do. You think people will not want to hear bad news? Talk about just that kind of lesson and how that might translate.
I mean, one of the chapters I know in my book and kind of something that guides our whole parenting philosophy is like, just codified as resilience over happiness. And I don't know if you hear this, Lenny, but I used to hear this all the time and I couldn't let myself let this like small talk moment go. Like, don't you just want your kid to be happy? You just want your kid to be happy, right? And I'd always like ruin a perfectly, harmless comment, and I was like, no. And then again, we think in extremes. Oh, you want your kid to be unhappy? No, I definitely don't want my kid to be unhappy. But I think if we zoom out, especially in childhood, but I think I can make a parallel to work too. Optimizing for happiness in childhood is the quickest way to build anxiety and fragility in adulthood. Hard stop. Because in a kid's early years, what they're really learning is what range of experiences am I able to cope with? In how many different situations can I find my capability? Can I feel like I can get something done? Can I get through something? Or do I believe that the only way to feel like myself is to bring every form of discomfort to a zero and only find happiness? The irony is in adulthood, the thing that clouds out happiness often is our inability to manage disappointment, jealousy, right? Those things will always overpower happiness. And so happiness actually comes in adulthood from our ability to manage the widest range of difficult situations. That's what resilience is. It's our ability to handle the widest range of experiences. I'm not talking about toxic, okay? But just disappointment, jealousy, anger, feeling less than. These are just human experiences we have. And unintentionally, something's happened over the generations where we're optimizing for kids' happiness, right? Our kids will say something like, I'm the only one in my class who can't read. And we hop in with, oh, that's not true. Or, but you're so good at soccer, but you play chess, but you're doing this, as if I can't even tolerate my kids' upset feelings. And I tell parents all the time, our kids can only learn to tolerate the feelings we tolerate in them. Nothing's scarier to a kid that when they're upset, if I can't tolerate their upset feelings, that makes them doubly upset because it's like, oh, I guess this is unmanageable, which leads to adulthood where anything but comfortable and happy and doing a perfect job is actually experienced in your body as even worse because you spent that many years thinking those feelings were wrong. So what that means is when our kids are young and they go through hard experiences, those are our best opportunities to wire them for resilience and ironically for happiness later on, right? Because if I can support my kid, I'm not going to say, oh, no big deal. But there's a lot between no big deal and let me call the school to make this all better for you. There's a whole world. That's the world I think we try to live in Good Inside, where I can help my kids see they're capable of dealing with this. That's going to help them so much more over the years.
How do you think that translates to work? The way I think about it is just like, it's okay to upset people. You're better off. I think about, I think it was Kim Scott from Radical Candor had this great story where she had someone she was working with. He was doing a bad job. She didn't want to upset him. She didn't give him any feedback. 9 months later, it was just didn't get any better. So she had to fire him. And He's like, why didn't you tell me that I wasn't doing what you wanted me to do? Like, you could have told me somewhere along the way. And to us, it feels like, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but then it ends up hurting their feelings a lot worse. And that's a lot worse for them.
I think there's so many parallels. So one of the reasons I love talking about childhood is because that's when our brain is wiring. It's kind of when we form the blueprint, or my friend Miley calls it the factory settings for the rest of our kids' lives, right? That's like the ultimate, is to wire them with the default that works for them. But actually you can think about work relationships the same way, where of course people come, their brain's already wired, they're older or, somewhat. But if you think about it as a building, like your first number of months with someone is you're building the foundation for the whole building, which is the relationship you're going to have. And the earlier you're just optimizing for comfort and happiness, the more fragile your building is going to be. And you're right. Then you get to 6 months and you're like, oh, this person isn't doing so well, I'm going to give them feedback. But in their mind, they're thinking, I've never gotten a piece of, constructively critical feedback since I've been here. So I thought the nature of my relationship in this workplace was one of butterflies and rainbows all the time. So that doesn't mean day one, I think you should sit someone down and say, like, here's everything you're doing wrong. They're like, I just started my job. There's obviously reasonableness. But yes, when we're thinking about a resilient work culture, we want people who can say, this is hard and I can do hard things, not this is hard, so someone must be at fault and it should be easier. I don't know anyone who would argue for the second culture. So I think we should ask ourselves, well, what am I doing in the nature of my conversations with people that help me build toward that? And I'll make it really concrete, because I think so much of dealing with anxiety and struggle, not all of it, but I like a good formula, is this combination of I believe you and I believe in you. I think one of the ways we've majorly misunderstood anxiety, whether at any age, is we've doing the I believe you part, but we've forgotten the I believe in you part. And they're both, again, really necessary together, which might sound like this. Look, I believe you. This is a hard project. You're totally right. And you've never done something like this before. It makes sense. That's such a good phrase. It makes sense. You're nervous about it, right? Or something I say to my kids that I should say more at work. I'd be nervous if you weren't nervous. You have a big test. I'd be nervous if you weren't nervous. Of course you're nervous. That makes total sense. I'd feel the same way. And the reason we think you can take on this project is because we know you can figure this out. By the way, I'm here to answer questions and help you along the way, but I just want to make sure you hear that from me. Yes, this is hard, and I also know you can work through this, and the way you're going to feel at the end, you're going to feel so proud of yourself. And I don't want to take away the project from you, because I kind of think I'm taking away that feeling, and that's going to be the feeling that propels you to do all the other amazing things you want to do here. And let's work toward that. And that's actually, Lenny, something I used to say to my kids when they were your kids' age. Like, I just distinctly remember this time one of my kids was whining about this puzzle. And he's like, do it for me. Finish it for me. You have to do it, right? And of course, the easiest thing to shut down the tantrum is like, fine, here's how you do it. But it was a day I had a little more bandwidth. And I heard myself saying something that, I don't know, it felt like healing to me too. Honestly, I said, look, you're right. This is a hard puzzle. It makes sense you're frustrated. All of us feel frustrated when we want to do something and haven't figured it out yet. You're feeling this moment right. Take a break, take a breath, but I want to tell you why I'm not going to do this for you. There's no better feeling in the world than watching yourself work on something and make progress on something, and maybe even complete something that you originally didn't think you could do. Like, there's literally no better feeling than that. And I will not take that feeling away from you. And I think in the workplace, and definitely in parenting, we should be mindful of how often we take feelings of capability away from our kid. And I take that very seriously, because I feel very passionate about building a world where kids become adults who feel capable. And I think we can do that in these small moments more often.
As you share these stories and examples, I'm just like, I wish I had Dr. Becky in my ear constantly giving me advice as I'm doing stuff. And we'll talk about how people sort of can get that. But I'm actually really happy you talked about this I believe you lesson. I was going to bring it up. That was right next on my notes, because I've used it with my wife, actually, and it is so good and so effective. And this is why I love your advice, is that it works not just for kids, it works for adults. Just like, I believe you. I believe you feel this, even though I don't know why, and I wouldn't feel that way, but just, I believe you. I like this makes sense piece. I haven't thought about that. And then the I believe in you, that's interesting, because I did talk about like the way I remember phrasing this. This was like a moment I really remember, just like, you're smart, you'll figure this out. And then she just went back to me and she's like, wait, what did you just do there? I felt really good.
Well, if you think about it, and I'm very visual. So if you think about someone struggling, picture them in like a hole, not like an abyss, just like a little hole, okay? And we're a relational species. Like, at least we'll see what happens with AI. But for now, we're a relational species, okay? And so when we're really struggling, inherently, the reason why we're struggling is we're in a hole and we can't see the way out of it. If we were in a hole and could see the way out, we wouldn't struggle. So the only reason something feels so hard is because you're kind of in a hole without visibility. So what do you need as a relational species? You need someone you trust to have one foot in the hole with you. You do. That's the I believe you part. So it might be saying to your kid, and those words are so powerful. I think deep down, Lenny, that's literally what we're all looking for as humans, is just to be believed. I believe you. You really don't want to go to soccer practice. You're no longer starting on the team. The first soccer practice after you lose your starting spot sucks. Totally sucks. I believe you. But if you think about them in that hole, they need you to have one foot out of the hole. They need one foot in, but they need one foot out, because if we can't see a more capable version of our kid than they can access in that moment, we've collapsed into the hole with them, right? And so the I believe you is, I believe in you would be, look, you're going to go to practice today. You are. I want to just be honest. It's not going to be fun. You're not going to want to be there the whole time. You're going to feel embarrassed. You're going to hate watching them run plays with you on the sideline. And you're going to come home having survived. I'm going to be there for a hug. I'm going to let you know I'm proud of you. Maybe I'm proudest of you that moment, even more than when you scored the goal last game, because that's the hard stuff that's going to help you in life. And we're going to get through it together. And so I think for anyone listening, what's really powerful, I find what's really powerful with anything is thinking, what end of the spectrum am I on? Because it always gives me insight into where I can grow. Is the I believe you part easier for me? Or is the I believe in you part easier for me? And there's no morality. Just knowing where you are is helpful. Do I like to say to people, come on, it's no big deal. You can do it. Okay, that's the I believe in you. Ooh, I wonder if I'd be more effective if I focus on the first I believe you. Or do I lead as a parent, as a leader with I believe you, but ooh, do I sometimes like go into the hole with someone? Oh, okay, it's the other part I'm going to play around with. And I think that gives us all something to action on.
This is such good advice. I got tingles as you were describing what you were telling your kid. So if there's anything you take away from this conversation, this is useful with kids, with partners, with, I think, in work too. Just this idea of I believe you, and that makes sense. And then somehow making it clear that I believe in you.
Yes. See a more capable version of them than they can see in the moment. Doing those two things at once is like, it's magic. I talk a good game. It's hard for me too. Again, like these things are hard in practice, but at least, and I know you're like this too, it's helpful to have a framework to come back to.
And just these words are so, and you don't have to say them exactly, but these specific ways of phrasing is actually really great. Okay, let's come back to how people can get your advice constantly. So a lot of people see your advice on TikTok and Instagram and just kind of on Twitter and all these places, just like, there's Dr. Becky giving me some awesome advice. Not a lot of people know you have a epic business and product and community. Talk about that, just what you've built there, what it is, what people should know.
So what started as I put up my first Instagram post on, I think it was February 28th, 2020. So it's 2 weeks before New York City at least shut down, probably a lot of places in the US. And I didn't have some like premonition about COVID. The timing was just kind of nutty. And I even put up that post without any business in mind. I felt so compelled by these ideas around what we've been talking about and how different they are from what we've been handed down to us as truth, that the only way I can describe it is, this sounds like awful and visceral, but it felt like I was vomiting them out and I just needed somewhere to put them. And so when I look back, I was like, why did I do that? I don't know. It was more like relief than intentional, goal setting. And then New York City shut down. And then what happened was things just took fire. And what was really powerful, and I just kind of watched happen and tried to respond to, was the community that formed around it. What people wanted. I started doing these live workshops just because I had so much more to say than I could put into a carousel post. And the way people were connecting live, it still happens now in the live events. I think certain ideas I have or stories I tell can be really impactful to people. But if I had to choose between that versus what happens in our community, I would bet on the community every time. It's just amazing because I think these ideas tap into some value system or healing inside of ourselves, and safe communities form around value systems. And so what ended up happening from there is people were just telling us. They actually kind of incepted this idea. Like, Dr. Becky, I feel like you're doing parent school. And I was like, what? They're like, I go to school for everything that I've ever cared about. And I always joke that a friend said, do you know how much money I spent on gardening school? Like, I like my flowers, but I care about my children more. But I've spent more time and I've invested more in my tiny little garden or my cooking or my hobby. You know, certainly I've spent more learning about Greek history, which for most of us, no shade to Greece, doesn't actually impact our life that much anymore, than I have in parenting. And I realized, and this is what this whole, our business is around, is I really feel like parenting is the last area in life that we glorify instinct alone. Where we say, especially to women, this whole idea of maternal instinct, I don't know, this is probably a little controversial. I was like, wow, what a way to gaslight parents. Like, not to say there aren't some moments that are instinctual, but if I'm parenting by instinct, do you want to know what I'm going to do when my kid has a tantrum or when my kid lies in my face? It's not going to be pretty. Like, I don't know if any of us feel like that's a good option.
I believe you. No, you would not do that.
Right. And instinct, by the way, what's instinct? It's everything we've learned until that point. And what feels naturally in parenting is simply how we were parented. That's all that's going to be natural. And so I really, like, I started to get very angry with my community. We're like, why isn't there a better way? And by the way, with modern technology, shouldn't this be easy on your phone? Shouldn't you get access? Not to make a moment perfect, but we all spiral after a hard moment. And it's not the spiral that makes us have a bad week. It's the way we extend the spiral from how we talk about ourselves and the bad patterns. That last week, these are the things that add up to our and our kids' mental health. And I started to get angry thinking there should just be a better option for parents to learn without shame, without the expectation of perfection, to have something in their pocket, to combine it with modern technology, now AI, so many different things, and to preserve the human interactive element. So that's what Good Inside is. You know, my co-founder and I are both psychologists. We've known each other forever. And we have a whole team where, yes, there's the podcast and Instagram. And I always consider those like flags, like a strategy and a tip we hear. They're like flags. They're like things we try. But most of our struggle in parenting is we don't have a framework and an actual approach, which is the ground we would plant a flag into, which is why parenting feels like whack-a-mole. We're just like trying things, right? Even though we would never do that at work. We don't even do that with gardening or tennis. And so Good Inside in our app to me is like the most modern, alive, personalized, technologically informed way of feeling like I have something in my pocket and someone in a community too in my pocket that can just close the gap between how I kind of want to show up and how I do show up. None of us close the gap completely, but I do believe we deserve access to tools that can help us do that. And that's what Good Inside as a business is built around.
Just to give you more chance to plug what this is exactly, what do people get when they say download the app, sign up for the community?
What you get is, first of all, you get to just tell us what's going on with you. And we get to be the holder of that story and make sure we hit on the important themes. I really do believe I know kind of not formula that makes it too specific and like perfect, but we need to learn how to set boundaries. We need to learn how to stay connected to our kid without murdering ourselves. By the way, I also think the thing that you get in the app, which we have to learn better communication if we're in a partnership, because that gets tricky. We have to learn how to repair. We have to understand why we get so activated in our nervous system. And we have to do it in a way that we could do, 5 minutes here, there, and the go. So that's exactly what we're set up to do. If you can give us 5 minutes, we will give you something that's not just a tip. That is something, I always combine two things, understanding and action, right? Insight and something that you can actually do today, because I think that's how we can take a deep breath. Understanding gives us clarity and action gives us capability. And that's what we give parents. So you get that, we'll drip it to you. You tell us what's going on. We also have an incredible AI chatbot experience that also, beyond helping you in the moment, can help you say hey, this kind of thing that seems different, they're all kind of the same. Here's the common theme. Here's what we suggest for you to kind of get ahead of things. And then there are so many live events. I believe deeply that parenting is something where we have to connect to people. So I do, usually 2 or 3 live events in a month. We have coaches we've trained. So we've manualized the Good Inside approach. We have coaches who do support sessions. If you have a deeply feeling kid, you can come to as many of those in a month as you want. And there's always a parent to kind of connect. And so I would say you get answers to your questions, you get deeper dives if that's for you and you have the time and you love to learn. And then you also have a very, very active, expert-driven, but also just parent community for the live connected help that I think we all need.
Amazing. I'm a happy member. I was actually just chatting with your AI chatbot. Dr. Gigi is...
Yes, Gigi, exactly.
Gigi. Oh, so good. Okay.
Yes.
And where do people find this? Goodinside.com?
Yes,
right?
so easy.
Okay,
We
so
try to make it easy. Goodinside.com.
Okay. I have another question I'm going to ask about this experience. But before that, I'm going to take you to a couple of recurring corners on this podcast. The first is AI Corner. I'm curious if there's some way you found AI useful in your work, in your life.
So, yes. So it actually connects to what I was saying before, how I've learned about myself. I'm kind of allergic to ideas without action. And people would always say to me, Dr. Becky, one of the reasons I love your parenting guidance is you both help me understand a situation more deeply than like I find elsewhere, but you also help me translate it into like this absurdly practical thing I can say or do. And it's interesting because what I've learned is I'm so glad that's helpful for people. That actually is just the way I think. And I'm seeing that as I run my company also. And AI helps me close that gap. So let's say we're talking about the product and we're talking about a new onboarding flow and I have an idea. Like currently I'm, was playing around with Figma Make and I was like, oh my goodness, I can vomit my ideas. And I have so many ideas, not just about like, this is how I want to make someone feel. And I don't want it to sound like this. I want it to sound like this. I have so many ideas around my intention and the impact. And I don't like to have an idea that I can't fully see out. So I want to see the UX design, or I want to see the whole email flow. And my team knows me well enough to know that's just how I think. So they can get a totally new abandoned cart flow from me. And they might be like, Becky, we don't like this. We wish you just told us the idea before you built this out. I don't do that for them. And I'm like, if you want to trash the whole thing, I don't care. I'm not attached to it. But AI has allowed me to take an idea and turn it into something I can visualize and that's more real in such a rapid way. And I'm so excited about that.
That is super cool. It feels like this is what these apps are so useful for. People that are not designers, product managers, engineers, trying stuff out, prototyping, thinking through in real designs, not just, sketches. Well, Figma Make, that's cool. Proud podcast sponsor. Is that the one you find most useful?
It's funny. I'm just laughing because Andrew Hogan, who's does insights at Figma, he's been like a big Good Inside member. He's always talking about it. And I said to him, if it would help at all, I want to make a video for your team to tell them how obsessed I am with Figma Make in case that, and he's like, go ahead, so if this fails, I'm going to become an affiliate, or something for that. But that is the one I'm playing around with. I'm also playing around with Replit. Like my team was just showing me that one and Lovable. So I love playing around with any of those new tools. And then, yeah, whether it's, Claude or ChatGPT, I find the way I can work rapidly to get my ideas into a place. And I show my team how I use it. And I really do think the people who get the most out of prompting, like there is a vomiting aspect. Tell me all your thoughts. And I think a lot of people, especially women, we've been conditioned to like put everything into this like neat, organized package before we present it to the world in general. And I find prompting is best when we do complete opposite, right? And get it all out there and then you can refine. And that's one of the things I do with my team a lot. I'm like, I want to show you, just be in the room and I'll show you how I work through this with, let's say it's a ChatGPT. And I think that's one of the ways I'm also helping my team get a lot more from AI is showing them that kind of way of using it.
How big is your team, by the way? What's like the Dr. Becky operation? What does that look
65.
like? 65 people. That's incredible.
Yeah, well, and we're profitable.
And profitable. Have you raised money or is it bootstrapped?
We did raise money a couple years ago. We felt like, again, we have a very, very big vision for what we want to accomplish. I feel like at our core, it's a set of ideas and stories and a way of making people feel that happens to be represented as the biggest part of our business now in a digital product. But there's just so many other things in like a Disney type ecosystem that I think can come out of IP and story and feeling and connection. And there's a lot of really other exciting things, 2026 and 2027, that will further build that ecosystem. And I feel like as a team, we're set up to do that.
Oh, man, we need to do a whole episode on just the whole operation. But yes. I guess just to cover the empire, there's the book, there's the podcast, there's the app, there's the community.
So yes, and there's my second children's book will come out next year. So I feel like that's our first entry into kind of more physical product. And my second children's book is about deeply feeling kids. Those kids are kind of my passion project within the passion project that is good inside. I think they're the most misunderstood kids in the world. They're labeled dramatic, oppositional. A lot of parents even tell me, professionals tell them the issue is they don't punish them enough or they're not consistent. Those kids don't fear a loss of control. Their core fear is being too much, and they can act that out and unfortunately get it confirmed by the world. And so my second children's book will be about deeply feeling kids and gives parents something. If our app is like the companion for the parent, I feel like the connection moment and for a kid to see themselves in this book is, the purpose of that.
Is that something people can pre-order yet or not yet?
Yes, they can pre-order. It's out February
Okay.
2026, and pre-orders, thank you. Yes, helps so much. And I'll be doing a little tour around it as well.
And what's it called for people to look at up on Amazon or wherever they want to buy
It's
a book?
called Leave Me Alone, a good inside story about deeply feeling kids. And if you have one, these kids, the reason the title I think will resonate, and honestly, a lot of people say, ooh, that gives me a lot of insight in my partner, someone at work, is around their fear of being too much. They tend to have big explosive feelings and try to push the people away they care about the most in the exact moments they actually need them, thereby confirming their fears. See, I really am too much, which exacerbates the cycle until we know how to change it. So leave me alone is something a deeply feeling kid will often scream in their room when they're completely out of control. And that's actually in some ways their deepest fear, not their wish. And so the title plays to that.
How cool. Okay, we'll definitely link to that in the show notes.
Yes.
You can look it up on your favorite bookseller. Dr. Becky, how fun was this? What a unique conversation. We touched topics on every level of humanity, I think. Before we get to our very exciting lightning round, is there anything else that you wanted to share? Anything else that you want to double down on?
Kind of, I think before we started recording, I was saying how excited I am. I really mean it. You're like a major celebrity to me, and my whole team knows it. That of all of the podcasts I've been on, they're like, you must be nervous for Lenny. I was like, I am. What I said to you is that I love your podcast because I just learned so much, right? As a psychologist, CEO, obviously there's a lot for me to learn. And I've learned so much from you, and I really am addicted to learning. And the reason that's coming up for me now is I think about all the people who listen to your show, who I think they're like that too. They're forever learners. They love to learn. It's why they love your podcast, because you get so concrete and you follow, the thread down the rabbit hole, and it helps us feel more capable at work. And one of the things I've found interesting is so many people who have that forever learner growth mindset, whatever you want to call it, at work, we forget to access it with our kids. Like we say things like, it is the way it is. Like I feel like people who listen to your podcast probably don't say that at work. That's why they're listening to their podcast. Maybe it doesn't have to be the way it is. Or, oh, like I didn't know that before, but now I do. So I can try something new. And again, I'm never going to be perfect. Perfect is creepy, but I can grow. Like I'm more addicted to growing and learning than being right. And I guess I would just ask anyone listening, especially as a parent, to say, like, what if I just took that mentality home? Like, okay, yelled at my kid. I didn't mess them up forever. Do I know how to repair? By the way, did I have a parent who actually repaired with me? Because if I didn't, no wonder it feels awkward. I'm kind of the first person in my whole lineage to give a true apology to my 3-year-old. Of course, that's going to feel hard. Or, yeah, I don't understand tantrums, or I don't really understand why my good kid is lying to me. But maybe I could learn. I learn things at work all the time, and I give myself credit. And what if I took that way of being and just applied it to this other area? I'd both, I think, be more compassionate with myself, but I'd probably also feel better over time about how I was showing up. And I just think we forget to apply that because, again, parenting has been told as something that should just feel natural when it doesn't, right? So if we think of it as a set of skills, it's actually very hopeful. Oh, I learn skills from Lenny all the time. Like I can do that in parenting too.
That's such a beautiful message. What I feel is anytime I watch one of your clips and then do that thing and then it works, it's like, oh, that like expands your mind. Oh, wow, there's so much more I can learn. I should go deeper on what the hell I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing, so that is a really important message. Like you can learn this skill. It's not something anyone just knows how to do.
Yeah. And I like giving people very concrete things. So a question recently that I've asked my kids that have led to like amazing moments, just is some version of, if I could do one thing different this week to be a better parent to you, what would it be? I guess it's kind of like a 360-degree review, right? And
Give me a raise.
Sometimes your kid says the hurtful things. You cannot be on your phone as much, which just get ready for it and just get ready to receive. Okay, thank you for telling me that. And I think the thing that stops us is we think our kid is going to say, quote, stupid things. You could let me watch TV. the truth is, no matter what your kid says, it's a window into their world. And again, you can be the pilot who listens, but doesn't open the cockpit door. Oh, what would it be like to watch all the TV you want? Oh, your friends watch more. I'm so glad you told me that. Oh, does that mean I can watch TV? Sweetie, that's not going to be one of the things I budge on, but maybe here's something we could do instead. But just asking your kid that question and not expecting a profound answer, it makes me think, if anyone thought, like, what if my manager asked me that question? Wouldn't I immediately just feel better about my manager anyway, just from the asking of the question? And I think it's just something so actionable that every time I do it with my kids, I notice like their behavior is kind of better for the rest of the week just from that. And I want to give something high impact to anybody who's made it this far in the episode.
I love that that's like the reverse of this approach to this episode is like from the work environment, what can you bring to your kids? And it's like, do a little 360, ask for what feedback can you give me on my performance review as a parent this week.
Exactly.
So good. Okay. With that, Dr. Becky, we reached our very exciting lightning round. I've got 5 questions for you. Are you ready?
Yes.
Here we go. What are 2 or 3 books that you find yourself recommending most to other people?
I love The Power of Moments. I love Messy Middle. And I got a lot from Creativity Inc. as well.
Is there a recent movie or TV show you have really enjoyed?
I really liked Secrets We Keep, which was actually recommended to me by our product leader on Netflix. And I really loved K-pop Demon Hunters so much. I wrote a whole guide on it because I think it's just such an opener for really good, deep, connected moments with our kids. And so those 2 come to mind.
Is there a product you recently discovered that you really like? Could be an app, could be clothing, could be a gadget.
I started doing Liberty puzzles. Do you know? So some people have heard of Stave. They're like these, this is Liberty. They're thick wooden puzzles where they're kind of hand cut pieces. You never know what's an edge. Sometimes like the colors that connect are kind of the end of one color and start of another. So they're tricky. But having this out at night, number one, I find puzzling is something where you have to monotask. Like you truly cannot multitask. And I find it so hard for me to monotask these days, even though it gives me such grounded energy. So that allows that. And it's something, yes, with my kids, but oddly enough, me and my husband will find ourselves doing it together at night versus like being on the couch, doing work. And I feel like we're in the same world working on something together. And it's been really fun for that as well.
My kid has been really into puzzles recently. We have this menorah puzzle that we got, and he's just every bedtime, he wants to do it like 4 times. Finishes it again. He speaks Spanish because his grandma speaks Spanish to him. So he's like, mas, uno mas.
Oh, I love it. Love puzzles.
And I love it. He's just like, break it apart. Okay, let's start from the beginning.
Amazing.
Yeah, puzzles, how fun. Okay, 2 more questions. Do you have a favorite life motto that you find useful in work or in life?
This feels hard because it is hard, not because I'm doing something wrong. I just think this is so true in parenting at work. Like, it's so interesting how often something is hard and we tell ourselves the story that we're stupid or we're not good at it. And there's something so simple about reminding myself, no, like this feels hard because it is hard. Like I'm feeling this moment right. It's just hard. And I find that I always feel my feet on the ground again when I tell myself that.
Great segue to our final question. So you're building a product, building a company as a non-product person. What's something that surprised you about the experience of building a product and building a company?
It's funny. I'm hesitating only because I'm thinking of something and I'll say it, but I'm like, why did that surprise me? It should be so obvious. But I guess it's true that a company is just people. And before I started this company, I was in private practice, seeing people for therapy. And I feel like those skills are remarkably useful as the leader of a company where there's so many things I can't do. You're not going to ask me to financially model or, data analytics. But I feel like there's really strong people who can do that. But I believe that understanding people or just having the skill of attempting to understand people is a surprisingly, but I guess also retrospectively obvious, really good leadership skill.
Dr. Becky, this was incredible. It's such an honor to have you on. I just see you everywhere all the time. Learned so much from you, and what a treat to have you on this podcast. People are like, what the hell is going on here? I learned a ton myself, and I know people will too. 2 final questions. Where can folks find you, Good Inside, your book, anything else you want to share? And then just how can listeners be useful to you?
Oh, yeah. Just goodinside.com. And you can find our product there. You can find all the books that I've written there. You can find our newsletter. If you're just like curious to start there. All of it's at goodinside.com. I really do love feedback. So if you're there, if you're thinking, hey, your app, and I wish you did this. I mean, your listeners are such a treasure trove of brilliant product marketing, just thoughts that I can never have myself. And we're really trying to build something that makes a parent always exhale and feel a little more capable. And parents have the best information of how to do that. So being willing to share feedback and ideas, anyone can reach out to me on DM, or, you can email office@goodinside.com. But that's a way to help. I love learning from other people.
Awesome. Dr. Becky, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this valuable, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Also, please consider giving us a rating or leaving a review, as that really helps other listeners find the podcast. You can find all past episodes or learn more about the show at lennyspodcast.com. See you in the next episode.